the Italian 10-year. Why is that so important? Obviously, Italy, the most badly affected country in terms of the pandemic, and also perhaps the weakest in terms of its fiscal position. US yields at 85 basis points right now, and just at the start of European trading, the equity markets gain 0.7% on the Euro Stoxx 600. The FTSE 100 is also gaining 0.6%. The Xetra DAX doing even better, a jump of 1.1%. So actually having thought sort of at the tail end of yesterday that perhaps the global equity rally was petering out, was running out of steam, doesn't seem to be that way right now.
No, it's a strange morning. Now, let's have a look at what the stocks are to watch. Bloomberg's Morwenna Coniam joins us down the line from Dublin. Morwenna, very good morning to you. First of all, we're talking about Big Pharma, Lonza. Lonza hiring the Roche and Novartis veteran as its new CEO.
That's right. So Lonza has appointed Pierre-Alain Ruffieux, who was the manager at Roche. He's got 20 years experience in biopharmaceuticals, and previously worked at Novartis as well. This is a big deal for Lonza, which has been transforming from being a specialty chemicals company into institutional and drug company. Shares are down a little bit so far at the open, down 0.5%, a little bit more than the Stoxx 600 drug index. But that's an interesting move. They've been looking to move that way for some time. Acquisition, so it'll be interesting to see what he does there.
Yeah, and Bayer, now they've been in focus this morning for a couple of reasons. One, they seem to be a big taker-up of UK money in terms of support for companies. Bit of political controversy about that, but also, of course, they're facing more weed killer woes as a US court has banned dicamba. To you. First of all, we're talking about Big Pharma, Lonza hiring the Roche and Novartis veteran as its new CEO.
That's right. So Lonza has appointed Pierre-Alain Ruffieux, who was the manager. This came out yesterday that they've been selling dicamba, based herbicide in the US after a appeal court rejected a breakthrough to appeal for that permit. They've said that they don't acknowledge the risks it poses and that the Environmental Protection Agency has violated federal regulations. Now, this is important particularly for Bayer, which since it acquired Monsanto, they've had loads of legal liabilities regarding their fertilizer product, and they've also applied it to the dicamba-based herbicide applied to BASF as well, and other chemical companies using those. So that's an interesting one to watch, and we'll have to watch where that goes from here.
They seem to be 1.3% right now. Finally, Telefonica Deutschland are said to be nearing a German power sale to a KKR-backed venture.
Yes, according to people with knowledge of the matter, they are nearing that sale, and they plan to announce the deal in the next few days. They're planning to offload as many as 10,000 masks in the transaction. This is something that they've been obviously trying to do for a while. It could be done in multiple phases, and it would give them fresh funds as they're trying to compete in the local market against their larger rivals such as Vodafone or Deutsche Telekom. They own about 70% of their listed German unit, while the Spanish carrier owns about half that Telsia. The shares are a little higher this morning, up about 0.1% at the moment.
All right, thanks very much indeed for that. That's Morwenna Coniam joining us there this morning with stocks to watch. Caroline.
Yeah, good start for this, of course, as banks and auto and car parts makers are at the top of the list in terms of gains for European equities right now. Let's take you to our top stories, though, this morning. The European Central Bank has upped its response to the crisis facing the euro area. It has increased its emergency bond buying programme by a bigger than expected 600 billion euros. The central bank has also, though, extended the purchases until at least the end of June 2021 and cut its expectations for growth and inflation. The ECB President Christine Lagarde emphasised in a press conference on Thursday that powerful steps are needed to be taken.
We judged that it was necessary to increase the size. And I can assure you that there was an unanimous view in the Governing Council that had to be taken. In the face of that inflation outlook, and given our mandate of price stability, action had to be taken.
So that was the ECB President Christine Lagarde. And in an interview with Bloomberg, the Spanish policymaker Pablo Hernández de Cos has said that fears of deflation warranted the central bank's decision to ramp up stimulus. So there you have the nub of the potential concern around deflation.
Speaking of stimulus, what's happening over the other side of the Atlantic? Well, the Trump administration is reportedly planning or expecting to spend up to $1 trillion in the next round of economic stimulus there. But the measure is unlikely until next month at the earliest. President Trump has been meeting his economic advisors Larry Kudlow and Kevin Hassett later on Wednesday to discuss the package.
Meanwhile, later today, of course, we get the monthly labour market data out of the US. The outlook is bleak. Bloomberg's Michael McKee has the preview.
The focus will be on the unemployment rate, which should rise to a level not seen since the Great Depression. May's actual job losses should be about half the number seen in April, although they will cover more industries. Unemployment will spread from restaurants, bars, airlines, and hotels to retail and other businesses hit by a prolonged loss of demand. The latest Beige Book report shows economic activity continued to deteriorate even in regions that started to remove lockdown measures at the beginning of May. The hope is that as bad as the numbers will be, they will mark the bottom of the crisis. The slow drop of initial jobless claims suggests job losses may be more limited in June. That may help unemployment decline at least a little this month. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And here in the UK, the Bank of England has disclosed a list of companies that are using its emergency funding, which is designed to help the biggest companies in the UK weather the pandemic. The problem is that the programme is providing more money to firms controlled outside the country than to their domestic counterparts. Germany's BASF was named as the biggest recipient. The chemicals giant received £1 billion, that's the maximum allowed. Others big borrowers included, as I mentioned earlier, Bayer, the maker of the Roundup weed killer, and a unit of the US oil services company Baker Hughes.
Meanwhile, when it comes to Brexit, the UK and the EU are set to end this final round of negotiations without an agreement. Both sides stuck after a week of making little progress in terms of the talks. Bloomberg's Ian Wishart reports now from Brussels.
Officials are still far apart on some crucial issues. The tense atmosphere between them hasn't improved at all. So the failure to narrow the gap this week between the two positions will add to pressure from Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to intervene directly when they meet later this month. EU officials hope then to persuade Johnson to compromise. His spokesman says that's just wishful thinking. In Brussels, Ian Wishart, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The programme will be digging more into the post-Brexit process on Bloomberg Westminster at 12 noon UK time today. We're going to be speaking to the Irish MEP Billy Kelleher from the Renew Europe Party. Ireland obviously has a lot of interest in the outcome of this. It's direly affected potentially if there is no deal. And at the end also we'll be talking to Professor Alan Menon, Director of UK and Changing Europe, on what those WTO terms might actually mean. Give us that live on London DAB or download the podcast on Apple Music or your preferred radio app later.
Right, let's also talk about the latest US-China trade news. The American Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer says that he feels very good about progress of the Phase 1 deal with China. He says that Beijing is honouring the pact, denying a report that it wasn't living up to its commitments. Lighthizer's positive view comes despite recent tensions, though, between the world's two biggest economies.
And an OPEC Plus breakthrough. A delegate has told Bloomberg Saudi Arabia and Russia reached a tentative deal with the holdout member Iraq. The pair were pushing the producer to stop cheating on output cuts. The cartel needs as soon as this weekend to sign off on the extension for record production cuts.
And in top corporate news this morning, Lufthansa is leaving Germany's DAX for the first time since the benchmark was started. Travel restrictions have seen shares in the company fall 38% this year. That makes it just the 60th largest German company by market value, and the DAX is reserved for the top 30. Lufthansa will be replaced by the property company Deutsche Wohnen on the 22nd of June.
And if you want to catch up with where it is currently, on that it's just about 2% actually on the DAX right now. And Tesla chief Elon Musk is escalating his feud with Jeff Bezos, calling for Amazon to be broken up. Musk tagged the e-commerce giant's chief, tweeting monopolies are wrong, came after a book on coronavirus was removed from the Kindle store. Amazon says that was an error. Both billionaires are investing heavily and competing in space exploration.
Right, those are our top stories this morning. Let's get to the global news, more about the US protests. Here's Bloomberg's Lisa Gerrans. Good morning.
Caroline, good morning. A night of largely peaceful
protests as Americans gathered for memorials honoring George Floyd, the unarmed black man whose death sparked nationwide unrest after a police officer kneeled on his neck during an arrest. At a memorial service in Minneapolis, the Reverend Al Sharpton spoke about how that represents how some black Americans feel.
George Floyd's story has been the story of black folks. The reason we could never be who we wanted and dreamed of being is you kept your knee on our neck.
Meanwhile, the Secret Service has extended the security fence around the White House, putting more distance between protesters and President Donald Trump. Thousands of people gathered across Hong Kong for an annual commemoration of China's 1989 military crackdown in Tiananmen Square. Bloomberg's Karen Lee says people went despite a police ban.
Defying an unprecedented ban on congregating for the vigil amid virus-related social distancing restrictions. People skirted around metal barricades to assemble in the central park where the event is usually held, with many clustering into small groups to adhere to the measures. Other gatherings popped up across the city. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
To coronavirus, and Brazil has reported a record number of daily deaths, the nation surpassing Italy to become third in the world for total fatalities. Brazil has become an epicenter of the virus, with over 600,000 confirmed cases. Latin America now accounts for about 40% of the world's daily virus deaths. And face coverings are to become compulsory for people using public transport here in England. The new rule will be brought in on the 15th of June. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says those who do not wear them will face consequences. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and a quick take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrars, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents BSO at Home. While you stay inside, enjoy a curated collection of archived concerts and behind-the-scenes stories from BSO musicians. BSO Homeschool provides lessons for music lovers of all ages. New performances and messages from musicians are added regularly. Enjoy these selections and much more at bso.org/at-home.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Sherry Ann.
U.S. stocks rose for a third day on Tuesday amid positive economic signals as the virus lockdowns ease. This despite tensions and protests continuing across the country. Joining us now to discuss is Mainstay Capital Management founder, CEO, and chief investment strategist David Kudla. David, great to have you with us. We continue to hear about this disconnect between the real world and the markets. How long are we expected to continue seeing this, and what questions does this give rise to when it comes to valuations?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You know, when we turn on the TV or we hear the news on social media, we see what's happening in the country here, and it's a lot like what we've seen in Hong Kong over the past year. with the riots that are going on in 140 cities across the U.S., 4,400 people arrested. We now have 29 states that have called in their National Guard. 40 cities have implemented curfews, and it's almost as if it's almost ignored by the stock markets, because the U.S. stock markets have continued to advance in spite of it. So, when we talk about that disconnect between Wall Street and Main Street, we're seeing it once again.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash, and we are seeing European stocks firmly in the green, ending the week higher with the Stock 600 up 1%, the FTSE gaining 0.9, and the DAX rallying 1.7%, similarly so for the CAC 40 in Paris. US futures also pointing higher following what was initially a mixed trading day in Asia, but we have now seen most benchmarks close higher. The Hang Seng still trading and currently up 1.5%. Now, in stock specifics, I am keeping an eye on Deutsche Wohnen. It has surged 1.7% in Frankfurt on the news that it will be entering the DAX, later replacing Lufthansa instead as of next month. Taylor Wimpey gaining 0.3% here in London after reporting a strong order book this morning. Now, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is a bit weaker, down 0.4%. It is set for its worst week within 2 months. The yen, meanwhile, down 0.2 at 109.3. Sterling very bit up 0.5% at 126. The euro adding to yesterday's gains, currently trading at 113 after the ECB boosted bond buying more than expected. So to that end, we should be looking at some of the European bond markets. We are seeing the 10-year bund yield up 2 basis points, currently trading at negative 29. 10-year gilt yields up 0.3% at 34 basis points. BTP yields currently flat at 1.4. So an interesting move there. 10-year Treasury yields adding to this week's gains, currently up 3 basis points at 85 basis points. They are trading near their highest level since March at the moment. Oil is set for a 6-weekly gain. OPEC Plus has clinched a deal to curb production with the holdout member Iraq. Russia also said to be calling a meeting now. So we are seeing WTI higher by 0.5%, Brent up by 1% at $40 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Len Garrans with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. In Buffalo, New York, 2 police officers have been suspended after a video of them pushing an elderly protester to the ground went viral. The video shows a 75-year-old man lying motionless with blood pooling around his head. Police originally said the protester tripped and fell. He's been hospitalized in a serious condition. Twitter has removed a President Trump campaign video which paid tribute to George Floyd due to copyright issues. That's according to a message displayed on the original tweet. The Trump administration has reached out to the social media network to seek answers. And social bubbles can limit the spread of coronavirus, according to research from Oxford University. The study shows the best way to limit the spread of the virus post-lockdown is for people to reduce their interactions to a few repeated contacts. It added this can lower infection rates and flatten the curve more than simple social distancing. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you, Leanne. And more importantly, that study about social bubbles, it means that we can basically reduce our social contact and kind of stand it if we're allowed to see just a few people regularly.
Yes, absolutely. What they say is that you can meet a few people who have the same sort of lifestyle as you. So people who live in your neighborhood, who you see regularly out and about, because it's just basically saying don't travel, don't mix your contact distance too far. So it's still not like we can travel to see family if that's something that you're missing at the moment.
Yeah, me and everybody else. Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans, for all the world news. Let's talk a bit about the market then, shall we? The equity rally has shown little sign of abating. The US Stock 600 topping its 100-day moving average for the first time since February. We continue to see the gains this morning. US valuations, though, are also also near their highest level in 2 decades, with the majority of those gains coming from overnight trading. It adds another layer of mystery to a market that keeps defying gravity. That's according to our own Bloomberg reporter Danny Berger, who joins us this morning to explain exactly what is happening. What do the overnight markets look like then compared to the regular session, Danny?
Right, so I put on my trader hat here and I built 2 back tests. One, I only held positions overnight, so it would buy at the market close and then sell once it opened the next day. The other one was exactly the opposite, where I just held a regular hour position and then sold when the market closed and bought again at the open. And the difference here is really staggering. I actually didn't expect it to be this much of a difference. After hours, if you're holding when the market's not online, you would have gained 25% since the March low. A regular session position, just 5%. So this is a big difference, and it does tell us that the gains we've seen from the March lows, it's happening overnight when markets are not online. And here, test 1, I only held positions overnight. More risky because there's so many more risk events occurring overnight between companies making announcements at that time and the civil unrest in the U.S. not to mention.
Well, it's an interesting line you should put on your traders hat. What I'm putting on your nightcap, because it's all happening overnight when everyone's asleep. I mean, just take us to the reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you just think, okay, who's going to be trading overnight? And I'm sure there are plenty of people who are happy to be nocturnal for a bit to make these types of gains. They can also be investors overseas. But in some ways, it's happening overnight when markets are not online. And look, it's just a really easy way to make money right now. It's a pretty clear-cut trade. Sure, maybe it doesn't make sense at that time. The fundamentals or, no really particular rhyme or reason. But, if this anomaly exists, why not take advantage of it? Of course, though, easy money does have a way of getting punished. And we did see this in February. This sort of trade did very, very poorly. In some ways, it is also just a return to normal risk appetite. As I said, this is more of a risky trade. And because of that, it does historically tend to outperform because you're getting rewarded for that additional risk you are taking. Though I should say it usually doesn't outperform to the degree we're currently seeing. So there might be something else there. And that something else, again, might just be a market that keeps defying gravity.
Yeah, absolutely. Just briefly, the durability then of the gains from the March low. I mean, how does that play in?
Well, certainly investor sentiment is pretty polarized at the moment, but I think one telling sign of just how much further people think this can go is the fact that everybody is abandoning hedges. If you look at the ratio of bearish hedges to bullish ones, bullish ones are winning out by the most degree since 2014. So even if people think that the markets won't last, they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is. So we could see these gains for some time to come.
Fascinating. Danny, thanks. Danny Berger there, Bloomberg's Danny Berger, giving us a sense of what happens overnight in the markets. Now, coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, the latest round of trade talks, indeed the last formal one between the UK and the EU on Brexit, set to end with little progress made. But according to our next guest, a UK exit on WTO terms will be very good for the economy. Indeed, Patrick Minford says, actually, it's going to cost us $380 million if we don't come out at this point. Very interesting. We're talking to him next. This
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The White House is suggesting we could hit bottom today with the May employment report. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg predict the unemployment rate will top 19%, which could mark the low for pandemic-related job losses. The government's weekly jobless claims report yesterday offered a sign of hope. The 1.9 million claims marked the first time in about 2.5 months that the number fell below 2 million. Gap is being sued for refusing to pay rent for stores temporarily closed during the pandemic. Simon Property Group says it's owed 3 months' rent, totaling nearly $66 million. Gap has nearly 400 stores in Simon malls. JCPenney has won court approval for its $900 million bankruptcy financing package, despite objections from creditors. It gives Penny fresh cash to help cover its costs while in Chapter 11. Separately, Penny announced plans to close 154 stores. Closing sales will begin late next week. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labour market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg. The world is listening.
If you're having a business dispute, you know time is money. The longer your case proceeds, the more your case can cost. So speed up your resolution with the American Arbitration Association. Arbitration with the American Arbitration Association is faster. In fact, the median time frame for an American Arbitration Association B2B arbitration to be awarded is nearly 16 months faster than the U.S. courts. ADR.org. Resolve faster.
Imagine being...
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
We're all having to get used to the new normal, and at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed, retrieve data fast. Scalability, grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity, easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business Radio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And it's 8:30 a.m. here in London. Good morning, I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Now, in the markets, the Xetra DAX shot up by as much as 2.7% at the open this morning. At the moment, the Xetra DAX up by 1.9%, but we see gains across Europe. FTSE 100 up 1.1%, US Stock 600 gains 1.3%. So actually, the rally that we feared might peter out doesn't look to be. And S&P 500 E-mini futures also gained 0.9%. So we could well see a positive trading day in the US. The euro at the moment trading at 113.60 is stronger 0.2%. The pound too is stronger 0.5% as the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index retreats 0.4%. And in the oil markets, gains there too. Brent crude at $40.50, as in the bond markets, relief after the ECB pledge yesterday. Italian BTP is 141, German yields negative 30 basis points, and US yields on the 10-year 85 basis points. Those are the markets.
Right, let's have a look at some of today's top stories. Fears of deflation warranted the European Central Bank's decision to ramp up stimulus. That's according to the Spanish policymaker Pablo Hernández de Cos. Yesterday, the ECB upped its emergency bond buying program by a bigger than expected 600 billion euros, cutting expectations for growth and inflation in the process.
Meanwhile, in the US, Trump administration officials are reportedly expecting to spend up to $1 trillion in the next round of economic stimulus there. But the measure is unlikely until next month at the earliest. President Trump did meet with economic advisors Larry Kudlow and Kevin Hassett late on Wednesday to discuss the new package.
And the UK and the EU are set to end this week's last formal session of Brexit negotiations with little progress. Officials are still far apart on crucial issues ahead of a key deadline at the end of the month. EU officials are hoping to persuade Boris Johnson to compromise at talks later this month, but according to Number 10, that may be wishful thinking.
Well, let's stick to that topic then, shall we, with our next guest, Brexit. Joining us is Patrick Minford, who is Professor of Applied Economics at Cardiff University and also the chair of the organisation Economists for Free Trade. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Patrick. Thank you for talking to us. Look, everybody's looking sort of at this week of trade negotiations between the UK and the EU in anticipation that there won't be a breakthrough and that the UK could leave with no trade deal with the EU by the end of this year. Would that be a good thing in your view?
Would be a good thing, yes, really, because we are going to be able then to get on with free trade agreements with other countries, including the United States, of course, which we're actively pursuing at the moment. And when we do that, that will mean that our trade with the EU will be governed by competition with other countries who at the moment are kept out of the UK market by the inherited protection we've had over the years from
do you not
EU
think, though,
tariffs.
that... I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that businesses are really going to be prepared for a cliff edge? Businesses and the largest part of our trade is done with the EU.
Of course, the largest part of our trade is done with the EU, but that's because we've been inside a customs union for 40 years.
Yeah.
And that has given preference to EU suppliers. But once we leave, we will negotiate free trade with the rest of the world, and that will restore us to the situation, status quo ante, where we were able to buy from the rest of the world and sell from the rest of the world. The inherited protection we are today. And
do you not think, though, that... I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that businesses are really going to be prepared for a cliff edge? Businesses and the largest part of our trade are done with the EU.
Where they have a captive market.
But Patrick, the situation we're in is one completely transformed by the virus pandemic. It's absolutely crippled our economy, the European economy, indeed the global economy. What you're talking about is a process of getting to a stage of having trade agreements with the rest of the world, but that's going to take time. And everything is hobbled by what's happened this year. Surely it's better to postpone, to have an extension of the process until we're in a better financial state to deal with it.
Do you not think, though, that... I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that businesses are really going to be prepared for a cliff edge? Businesses and the largest part of our
different situation where they have a situation where we
But Patrick, the situation in EU is one completely transformed by the virus pandemic. It's absolutely crippled our economy, the European economy, the global economy. What you're talking about is a process of getting to a stage of having trade agreements with the rest of the world. But that's going to take time. Everything is hobbled by what's happened this year. Surely it's better to postpone, to have an extension of the process until we're in a better financial state.
Having said that, having been badly affected by the pandemic here, surely we would potentially, for the first time in many years, be net beneficiaries in this feasible.
No, I don't think so.
Patrick, the situation in EU is one completely transformed by the virus pandemic. It's absolutely crippled our economy, the European economy, the global economy. What you're talking about is a process of getting to a stage of having trade agreements with the rest of the world. But that's going to take time. Everything is hobbled by what's happened this year. Surely it's better to postpone, to have an extension of the process until we're in a better financial state.
We're in line to help out in this crisis that they've caused by the fact that they're all in the Eurozone and they've created all these rules and of course there's great reluctance of certain countries to help the other countries, and that's a situation we really don't want to be involved in at all.
But Patrick, we're looking at possibilities of an extension. Now, the UK government said it won't happen. The EU hopes it will for these talks. But you've written, I think last month, you wrote it would cost the UK £380 billion if we did extend. How on earth did you come up with that figure?
Well, I'm just trying to give you a hint that, we get involved in the EU's own internal problems to do with the crisis they're in over the COVID situation. And also, we deny ourselves the benefit of leaving, which are enormous. I realize that most economists think we shouldn't leave, and therefore they approach it from a completely different angle. But we've done the calculations from the point of view that we gain enormously from moving back to free trade with the rest of the world and resuming regulations of our own economy according to our own interests, and which are hugely different from those of the EU, which takes a regulative approach that would not be our regulative approach. So these are gains that we make from leaving, and if we don't leave, we give up those gains. That's a very simple point, which we've made repeatedly: the gains of free trade and the gains of gaining our own regulative freedom. And these are completely neglected by the vast majority of economists who are, quite frankly, continuing in a Remainer mode.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Patrick Minford, who is Professor of Applied Economics at Cardiff University and also the Chair of the Organisation for Economists for Free Trade, Roger, as we come to the end of this week, and the idea that, that there may not be a deal in terms of the UK and the EU's post-Brexit trade negotiations.
Indeed, it's an interesting moment. Right, let's get the latest now in global news from Leanne Gerrans. And Leanne, you begin with what's been going on in the US.
Yes, Roger, good morning. A night of largely peaceful protests as Americans gathered for memorials honouring George Floyd, the unarmed black man whose death sparked nationwide unrest. The Secret Service has extended the security fencing around the White House, putting more distance between protesters and President Donald Trump. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is urging demonstrators to get tested for coronavirus. Thousands gathered across Hong Kong to commemorate the victims of China's military crackdown in Tiananmen Square. That's after police outlawed a mass gathering, citing the coronavirus pandemic. As well as the main gathering in Victoria Park, many congregated in smaller groups to adhere to social distancing rules. Now, India and Australia have signed a crucial defence agreement and upgraded their partnership as both nations navigate fraught relations with China. Bloomberg's Archana Chowdhury has the details.
The move will allow them access to each other's ports and naval bases. It's being done at a time when both nations are facing increasing hostilities from China. Chinese troops have been engaged in a standoff at India's Himalayan borders for over a month. Australia, meanwhile, has been facing a backlash for seeking a global investigation on the coronavirus pandemic. In New Delhi, Archana Chaudhary, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And France is trying to prevent losing a generation to coronavirus unemployment. Bloomberg's Anya Nussbaum says it means President Macron is ready to review his flagship reforms.
The country is beefing up incentives for apprenticeships. It's also ready to support businesses that keep staff on payroll during a prolonged downturn. The government's move to support apprenticeships and make them available to more companies would cost around 1 billion euros, an official in the president's office said. In Paris, Anya Nussbaum, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you, Leanne, for that world news update. Now, coming up next on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, Paras Anand, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Fidelity International for the Asia Pacific, will be joining us next for a discussion. This is Bloomberg Live from London.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Nose and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Who's in your corner? At Commonwealth Financial Network, our advisors would say we are. Our supportive environment lets you be true to yourself, and our culture of accountability means we don't just ask for your feedback. We act on it, so we can deliver the solutions you need to enrich the lives of your clients and build the business you've always dreamed of. Ready to discover the difference? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that moment. Feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Tesco, we've price-matched Aldi on hundreds of products, like bananas, peppers, chicken breasts, mushrooms, Warburton's bread, strawberries, even avocados. That's Tesco products at Aldi prices. Because now more than ever, every little helps. Tesco. Prices checked on comparable products from GB Aldi stores and online twice weekly. Price most often found matched excluding promotions. Selected Tesco stores excluding Express and all Northern Ireland stores. Products and their availability vary weekly and by store. Details at tesco.com/Aldi price match.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. The best sports story all day, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. ESPN Daily.
Search ESPN Daily to listen.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother?
Man, I'm good.
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Pulls over a man into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
Plays to the 5! Touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, European stocks are ending the week higher after the rally stalled a bit yesterday. We are now seeing the stock 600 up 1.6%, adding to those record valuations. The FTSE gaining 1.3%, the DAX rallying as much as 2.4%. Similarly so with the CAC 40 and US futures also firmly in the green. It follows a similar trading day in Asia. In stock specifics, I am keeping a close eye on Taylor Wimpey, surging 5% after an improvement in its order books. We're also seeing Deutsche Wohnen higher by 2% in Frankfurt on the news that they will be entering the DAX, replacing Lufthansa later this month. Now, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is down about 0.5%, set for its worst week in 2 months. The yen falling 0.2% at 109.4. Sterling adding to this week's rally, now up 0.7% at 126. The euro also gaining up 0.2 at 113. Of course, the euro very much bid after the ECB boosted bond buying more than expected. So if we look at the bond markets, we are seeing 10-year bund yields higher by 3 basis points at negative 29. 10-year BTP yields holding around 1.4 basis points at the moment. 10-year gilt yields trading up 3 basis points at 34 basis points, and benchmark treasuries up 3 basis points as well at 86 basis points, the highest level since March. We are seeing oil set for its 6th weekly gain as well after OPEC Plus has clinched a deal to curb production with its holdout member Iraq. We'll also understand that Russia is calling for a meeting, so we are seeing WTI up 1.4%, very near $38 a barrel. Brent trading well above $40 a barrel, surging as much as 2% this morning. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Lynn Garrins with more on what's going on around the world. Sandra, thank you. In Buffalo, New York, an elderly protester is in a serious condition after being shoved to the ground by 2 police officers. The video shows a 75-year-old lying on the ground with blood pooling around his head. The Buffalo police are investigating. The 2 officers have been suspended without pay. Brazil has now passed Italy to have the 3rd highest death toll from the coronavirus. The country reported more than 1,400 deaths yesterday. In all, more than 34,000 Brazilians have died from the disease. Brazil accounts for about 40% of the world's daily virus deaths. And professional basketball is on track to restart its season at Walt Disney World in Orlando. It's the biggest test yet for US sport, which is looking to return back smoothly after a months-long blackout. The Board of Governors approved the plan to resume this season, with games beginning at the end of July. Strict protocols to prevent the spread of the coronavirus will be in place. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans, with all the world news there. Well, let's go to our markets conversation this hour. Paris Anand, who is the Asia Pacific Chief Investment Officer at Fidelity International, joins us this morning. Thank you so much for being with us on Bloomberg Radio and Television this morning. Look, the global economy, we are looking to the recovery in Asia as really leading the way in the post-coronavirus world. How quickly do you see recovery there, and what does it tell us about rebound perhaps in Europe and the US?
Hi, good morning, Caroline. So what we can see from Asia, which is we look at economies like China as emerging from kind of lockdown earlier, is that there's been quite a sharp rebound in economic activity. There's a large number of data series you can look at that sort of evidence that, but it's, we're looking at everything from traffic on the roads to construction activity restarting. We can see that pick up in the sort of level of activity. I'm not sure that it's telling us too much about how we can differentiate between certain levels of activity coming online post a period of very strong suppression of activity. What it's going to be telling us about the sort of the medium term. So I think to summarize, we definitely see a sort of a quick resumption of activity, and certainly areas of sort of pent up demand emerging. What we're still unsure of is the duration, the kind of the follow through from that activity.
Yeah, because the demand issue is crucial. We've seen from the way that China has recovered from all this that's the lagging issue, I guess, to do with issues of security, unemployment, and confidence. How long do you see that going on before demand begins to come?
Look, it's a really good question. I think that one of the things that I think is worth people thinking about is that when I look at Asia in particular, you haven't seen the levels of either monetary stimulus or fiscal stimulus or policy support to the economy. You've seen some, but it really pales in significance relative to what we've seen in Europe and certainly what we've seen in the US. So when I look at sort of how the demand picture in the region, forgetting about whether it's particularly hard to know, at least I can get a sense of it being sustainable demand, because it's not been so much sort of stimulated by emergency measures. I think that's trying to sort of understand the extent and sustainability of demand as we kind of look at the global economy. I think that becomes more complex because you then have to sort of factor in the extent of stimulus that we're seeing.
On a completely different note, what about Hong Kong? We've got, one of the major issues for investors has been the clash between the US and China on trade, but now on Hong Kong, and it pulls in also the UK, of course. How confident are you that Hong Kong can remain a key financial centre in Asia and in the world? How do you see this going forwards?
Well, thanks, Caroline. I mean, I do feel that what we're seeing right now, that actually Hong Kong stands to continue to be a very important and potentially an increasingly important financial centre as we kind of look out into the future. Because one of the things that you have seen, partly as a result of US-China relations deteriorating, is the repatriation of listings of large Chinese companies, whether that's tech companies, biotech companies, to Hong Kong. And so, and these are, sort of businesses of substantial size, substantial sort of trading volume. And so I think that, so certainly from that perspective, I think Hong Kong continues to be, a sort of a key financial center. And then as we kind of look at sort of, at markets, and we look at things like, the Hong Kong dollar. The Hong Kong dollar has been one of the strongest performing currencies, over recent times. So I do feel that we are getting, looking at it from a number of different perspectives, that actually, Hong Kong will remain a very important, financial centre for the world and for the region.
And as all this, of course, speaks to the wider issue of the China-US relationship. We did see moves in terms of airlines on both sides in the last week, which seems to be, or could be, I suppose, on the US side, a bit of a drag on what's going on in Asia. China opening up to some airlines coming in. How important do you think that is for the regional economy?
I think that I think there are a couple of key points to make. I think first is that I think it's useful for investors and people just to sort of consider that we are going to be in a period of strained US-China relations for an extended period of time. I think that if you are in that camp that is sort of looking for signs of kind of improvement, then I don't think that they're sort of coming anytime soon. And so there is an extent to which this is just a kind of a story that is a kind of a phenomenon that is going to roll sort of continuously with various different sort of flashpoints coming up over time. And I think what that then speaks to is this kind of increased regionalization of the global economy. And so as we start to see, for example, travel routes open up, I think that there'll be much more intra-regional travel within Asia, and that in and of itself, I think, will kind of spur an increased element of regionalization. So that's really, I think, how to look at some of these these events in a broader context.
Yeah, indeed. And just briefly, you also think that there are going to be losers. Perhaps there will be a clash between Wall Street and Main Street, between the macro and what we're seeing in terms of the market rally.
Yes, I think that there's no doubt that we've seen sort of asset markets and market prices respond very well and sort of recover quite strongly. Given the level of central bank intervention, given the sort of the level of stimulus that we've seen, and those kind of early signs of economies, coming out of lockdown. I think, what I would say is that it's quite likely that kind of prices have sort of run ahead of fundamentals in the short term, and that please.
It's we're running out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much for that, Paras Anand there, Asia Pacific Chief Investment Officer at Fidelity International, joining us with a sense of how the global economy is responding to all this. This is Bloomberg.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The idea is to really hold the economy in suspended animation until we get control of this virus.
We are very much in a picture of monetary dominance.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
We are in a national crisis. I think it is for all parties to pull together.
The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hebke.
And from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. You're listening to Daybreak Europe on London DAB Digital Radio.
So as we get towards the weekend, Matt, it's in sight, for me at least. We've had a couple of really interesting conversations this morning on the markets. As we see the rally continue in Europe, US Stoxx 600 up by 1.6%. But then also the end of a week in which the Brexit negotiations don't look to have moved us any further forwards. And we were speaking to the Liberal Democrat MP Alistair Carmichael on Brexit. But also, of course, he's one of the key voices in the UK who's been very critical of HSBC and the other big banks about their support for what China is doing in Hong Kong with the national security laws.
By the way, I've been listening to you in the mornings.
Have you?
You know, I discovered something recently that I must have known about before, but normally I would stream Bloomberg on the internet, but recently I've been doing it via the mobile app.
Oh, yes, on the phone. That's really good.
So, and it's so much easier. I always have my Bloomberg mobile app open anyway, but you can scroll down to TV or radio. I click radio and the Bluetooth streams it to my car. It's fantastic. In any case, yes, great interview this morning. And it's fascinating to watch what's going on in Hong Kong. You know, the protests that were banned for the Tiananmen Square Memorial, I think it's the 31-year anniversary.
Yes.
They went on anyway. Thousands of people gathered in public, defying the ban. And, of course, you had the online protest, online memorial as well. So,
yeah.
I
wonder whether we're at a moment of protest. I wonder how much the lockdown has factored into that, people's sort of feelings of frustration, you know, because we're also covering, of course, the US protests as we have done all week, and that'll be in world and national news in a moment. But London has seen protests too. I think there is, you know, perhaps some frustration around the world at various issues around inequality and treatment. But anyway, should we also take you to the markets then?
There's no frustration with markets unless you're short, right? I mean, buy everything has been the best strategy recently.
Yeah, indeed. So I'll start with the Xetra DAX then, shall I? Because actually that jumped about 2.7% at the open here in Europe, now up by 2.3%. But the FTSE 100 up by 1.3% this morning, and the US Stoxx 600 gains 1.6%. Also, having sort of thought that maybe there would be a pause in the rally in the US, S&P 500 E-mini futures are also up this morning 1%. And we had a very positive trading session in Asian equities too. I note that the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is weakening 0.4% this morning. A stronger euro. We'll talk about the ECB bond buying program in a moment. I'm sure we are trading at spot 1.353 on the euro. The pound surges 0.6% on cable, and then we also see a pickup for crude prices at the moment. So Brent crude up 2%, $40.84, and in the bond markets, lastly, Italian BTPs are the most of interest. 1.42% for Italian BTPs, negative 29 basis points for German yields. So that's a quick roundup of where we are in the markets right now.
Yes, the second. By the way, if we hold gains, this will be the second week in a row that we've had a rally 4 out of 5 days, 4 out of 5 sessions. So it just seems like there's real exuberance in markets, and you can understand it when you see things like the ECB yesterday. Let's talk about that. The ECB ramping up its emergency bond buying program in response to the downturn, and more than expected. Christine Lagarde expanded the purchases by 600 billion euros and extended the PEP program until at least the end of June 2021. For more, let's bring in Peter Chatwell, head of multi-asset strategy at Mitsuo International. Peter, what do you think about this? I mean, is the buy everything strategy still right when you have all of these central banks and governments, Germany as well, of course, just coming out with stimulus package after stimulus package?
I think buy everything is going to struggle in the near term, because what we tend to see is markets going through phases. And I think what investors are going to do, as they're coming into the euro and they're looking at the cyclical recovery trade and they're feeling like the ECB is really helping to reduce tail risks, they're going to be focusing on the riskiest asset classes. They're going to be focusing on credit, investment grade and high yield, and equities. So I don't think that they are going to be looking at euros and looking at rates and going, I really must buy a Bund here. So I think that the Bunds, even though long term these are cheap, I don't think they're going to get the love that they deserve over the next couple of months. So I think that there is going to be a clear investor preference, a rotation for a couple of months in favour of risky assets. And what that's going to mean is that you're going to see an acceleration of the decline in spreads. And I think that then, probably in a couple of months, then there's going to be some strong questions asked about, is it correct? Have we gone too far, too fast? But for now, this is still the early phase of the cyclical recovery trade. Okay. And that doesn't favour rate.
Okay, so then how much does the story in the US dent the rally, if at all, given that we're expecting potentially 20% unemployment in America today when we get the non-farm payroll numbers?
Yeah, look, this is one of the things that in a couple of months is going to have people asking themselves really, really difficult questions. You know, why am I long risk at this point, given the macro data are so weak and the macro side of things is still going to probably be quite precarious. Now, on the jobs front, what people are going to be looking at is the change, not the level. So if the increase in unemployment, to use that example, if the increase in unemployment is slowing or is not as large as was expected, that's going to be viewed as a positive. The market is firmly in that mindset of the change rather than the level. So the fact that growth data, forward-looking proxies for growth, have bottomed out earlier this month, that's seen as a big positive for the market because it confirms that the worst is behind us for the market who's looking at growth. But the worst is not behind us for the labour market. Labour markets are getting weaker, not stronger. And I think that's something that's much more important for those who are focusing on inflation. And I don't think that there's really much prospect of inflation in the near term or in the medium term. And that's something for markets to think about once this cyclical recovery trade has slowed down.
What does that mean for gold at 1708?
It means that, gold is, I think, is going to have some challenges in the near term. Structurally, I think that gold is a fantastic asset because if you take a step back, a step back away from near-term animal spirits, then what are governments doing? What are central banks doing? They're issuing record amounts, eye-watering amounts, unimaginable a few months ago, of currency. They're issuing tremendous amounts of debt, and in that scenario, you really have to question the value of conventional fiat money, and therefore, what are the other stores of value? And I think gold stands out as being a store of value over the medium term. So yes, I think that this risk-on trade is going to detract somewhat from the value of gold, but it means that when we're looking at the market in 2 or 3 months' time, then I think gold is going to be standing out as one of the asset classes that should be favoured once again. I'm looking at the market with different horizons. Gold is fundamentally cheap when you've got the Fed and the ECB expanding their balance sheets to record sizes.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Let's see what happens then with this continued this continued story in the markets. Thank you so much, Peter Chatwell, who is head of multi-asset strategy at Mitsuho International. Thank you very much for joining us on Bloomberg TV and radio today. Right, let's get over to Bloomberg's Roger Hearing, back again with us on radio to take us through the world and national news. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Yes, a night of largely peaceful protests in the US as Americans gathered for memorials honouring George Floyd, the unarmed black man whose death sparked nationwide unrest. The Secret Service has extended the security fencing around the White House in Washington, putting more distance between protesters and President Trump. And the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, is urging demonstrators to get tested for coronavirus. Thousands of people gathered across Hong Kong for an annual commemoration of China's 1989 military crackdown in Tiananmen Square. Bloomberg's Karen Lee says people went despite a police ban.
Defying an unprecedented ban on congregating for the vigil amid virus-related social distancing restrictions. People skirted around metal barricades to assemble in the Central Park where the event is usually held, with many clustering into small groups to adhere to the measures. Other gatherings popped up across the city. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And the UK and the EU are set to end this final round of Brexit negotiations without an agreement, with both sides stuck after a week of making little progress. Bloomberg's Ian Wishart reports from Brussels.
Officials are still far apart on some crucial issues. The tense atmosphere between them hasn't improved at all. So the failure to narrow the gap this week between the two positions will add to pressure for Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to intervene directly when they meet later this month. EU officials hope then to persuade Johnson to compromise, but his spokesman says that's just wishful thinking. In Brussels, Ian Wishart, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Great stuff. Thank you so much to Roger for the world news update. Now let's get some sports news. European sports with Joe Rawson.
Premier League clubs will be able to make 5 substitutes when matches return later this month, while they've also agreed in principle to play at neutral venues if deemed necessary. Sky's Geraint Hughes reports.
No vote, but an agreement in principle that neutral venues can be used if it is required. The scenario that might exist, of course, is if there are objections by a safety advisory group, for example, but also if there was a local spike in coronavirus figures as well.
Tottenham have borrowed £175 million from the Bank of England to help them battle the financial effects of the football shutdown. It follows the club saying they expect to lose £200 million of revenue in the next year. And the first Group 1 horse race of 2020, the Coronation Cup, takes place at Newmarket this afternoon. There's a 7-strong field headed by champion stayer Stradivarius.
All right, thanks very much for the sports report there. Always good to know what's happening in the wide world of sports as the lockdown lifts. When we come back here on Bloomberg Radio, we're going to continue to talk about this amazing wave of stimulus that we've seen, Caroline, from, first the German 130 billion extra, now it's 1.3 trillion. Then the extension of the ECB bond buying program by 600 billion. Now that's 1.35 trillion. So the stimulus it continues to grow. None of that changes the coronavirus situation in the UK. It's been much worse. I'm constantly reminded in the UK than it has been here, or the Brexit issue.
No, indeed. And we're going to talk about Brexit next with our Bloomberg opinion columnist, Therese Raphael. And this, of course, don't forget, actually, that Germany's sovereign debt is going to be rated by DBRS today. So that sort of ties into those two stories for you. But we'll be speaking to Therese Raphael coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Influential Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Emily Chang.
FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel has said President Trump is trying to turn the FCC into his personal speech police. She joined us earlier.
Section 230 has been around for decades, and it's really important for online speech. It protects all sorts of online expression, but this executive order asks the FCC to make rules for Section 230 so that the agency would give a green light or a red light for what kind of speech can go online and what should be taken down. I don't think that's right.
The FCC hasn't taken any action on this yet. Do you think they will?
Well, according to the executive order, the Department of Commerce is going to file a petition with the FCC asking us to take action sometime before the end of July.
So is that an appropriate role for the FCC? I mean, if Chairman Pai, who controls the agenda, was here with us, what would you recommend to him?
I don't think the Federal Communications Commission should be the president's speech police. I think we've got a First Amendment and we need to honor it.
That said, Section 230 is, as you mentioned, a decades-old law. Do you think that Section 230 can really remain and should remain untouched?
Absolutely. But here's what I know. It's up to Congress to write the laws. The president can't issue a new law through executive order or ask an agency like mine to rewrite the law.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City. I'm Amory Hordern with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Equities this morning are rallying across the globe. The Euro Stoxx 50 up more than 2% alongside the CAC and the DAX. FTSE 100 in London up more than 1%, and S&P 500 mini futures up 0.9%. This, of course, we see fresh stimulus measures from really around the world. We had yesterday the ECB boost their bond buying. We had a massive fiscal package from Berlin. And then today, there is talk that the Trump administration is eyeing a $1 trillion additional stimulus package that is certainly helping U.S. futures. In the currency market, we do have the Bloomberg Dollar Index down 0.4%. Biggest weekly drop in 2 months for the dollar. We have the euro rallying 1.13 against the dollar, and cable 1.26. So sterling quite firm against U.S. dollar this morning. In the bond market, yields on the 10-year up 2.3 basis points, 0.85%. And then in commodities this morning, Brent crude trading north of $40 a barrel. This is the OPEC Plus group seems to have reached a tentative agreement. They are closing in on that, able to get Iraq on board. They're going to have a meeting this weekend on Saturday. That's a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now here's Roger Herring for more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. In Buffalo, New York, 2 police officers have been suspended after a video of them pushing an elderly protester to the ground went viral. The video shows the 75-year-old man lying motionless with blood pooling around his head. Police originally said the protester tripped and fell. He's been sent to hospital in a serious condition. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer says he feels very good about the progress of the Phase 1 deal with China. He says Beijing is honouring the pact, refuting a report it wasn't living up to its commitments. Lighthizer's positive view comes despite recent tensions between the world's 2 largest economies. Social bubbles can limit the spread of coronavirus, according to research from the Oxford University. The study shows the best way to limit the spread of virus post-lockdown is for people to reduce their interactions to a few repeated contacts. It adds this can lower infection rates and flatten the curve more than simple social distancing. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Great stuff. Thank you so much to Roger Herring there for our world and national update. Yeah, I thought that the bubble story is interesting. I mean, I suppose maybe it means that here in the UK, people can perhaps limit their social contacts for a bit longer, as we still are struggling to get the number of cases under control in the UK.
It is pretty amazing how bad it is in the UK compared to here in Berlin. You know, I'm constantly reminded because I have a hobby. I collect stuff, and most of these things are made in Scotland. So I'm constantly trying to deal with these vendors who are in a horrible situation. And, you know, coming from Berlin, where all the shops are open, all the restaurants are open, we're back in gyms, we're back in bars. It seems
you managed to limit the number of deaths in Germany to like 8,000, and in the UK, you know, the official tally is sort of around almost 40,000 people. So, yeah, it's a much greater problem, at least still at the moment in the UK.
Yeah, the bubble idea is an interesting one for sure, and it's also quite concerning that that new infections don't drop significantly now that we're into the summer, because you've had very good weather there over the past few weeks. And a lot of people think that might be part of it. There's not enough evidence to say scientifically whether this virus, like a lot of other coronaviruses, will dissipate in the summer months. But I think the main reason it's concerning is now that we have this pickup in protests across the U.S., in Hong Kong, a real concern would be to see a big second wave spread through all of those people who they're able to, but they aren't willing right now to limit social distance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a concern here in the UK too, how long social distancing measures will need to be in place. Right, but I want to talk about the other big kind of political story in the UK. I mean, yes, we're still dealing with the pandemic, but then in the background, a week of negotiations between the UK and the EU on a post-Brexit trade deal.
No longer much of a concern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an issue, but not really a concern anymore, it seems.
No, because, I mean, it seems unlikely that a breakthrough is going to happen this week. Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo is joining us live from Brussels this morning. And obviously the UK's stated position from the government is that we are leaving sort of, you know, no deal or no deal at the end of the year. Maria?
Yes, and unlike with Theresa May, I would have to say that with this, British government has been very consistent on and off the record that it will be leaving the customs union and it will be leaving the single market. By the end of the year, it won't seek extra time to get a trade deal from the European Union, and that it just really wants to deliver on the mandate that Boris Johnson ran the election on, which was Brexit. Let's get it done quickly, let's leave. So that is really the fundamental issue at this point. The Brits do not want to leave, and then there's issues that have been playing out here in this negotiation for weeks now, such as the fisheries, the fishing access, but the bigger points of the trade deal appeal the ECJ? What is a level playing field? How much state aid could perhaps the UK issue compared to countries in the European Union? The Europeans are concerned that this is a country that is not going to be a loyal competitor, and they would point the UK is not like Canada, it's not like Japan. Those deals took, by the way, years to negotiate because it competes so closely with the EU, and geographically it's just so close to the EU. Then they just have to get these assurances that the UK will compete further. That is something we understand is not there yet, and the talks today will once again show that there has been no progress. And look, this is the end of it. Someone will have to stage an intervention, whether that is von der Leyen or Boris Johnson remains to be seen, but it looks like it's headed that way.
Well, and Maria, isn't Brussels, doesn't von der Leyen have a lot more important things to worry about with the coronavirus and the resultant recession? Doesn't Brexit really go to the back burner?
Well, Matt, I'm very happy you actually say that, because that is something that we should factor in. For the Europeans, Brexit is not top of the agenda. The Europeans have to deal with the pandemic, which is still playing out. The Europeans have to deal with the economic fallout. They also have to worry, frankly, each European leader about the way they're being perceived by their domestic audience and the way that they handled this crisis. And they also have a huge meeting coming up in 2 weeks that will focus on their recovery fund. So that is what they want to focus on. And really, Brexit not playing in at this point, top of the agenda.
Yeah, of course, and the deadline for the UK is the 30th of June. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo there, live from Brussels, taking us through the UK-EU Brexit trade negotiations. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Charlie Pellet. Japan is debating scaling back next year's Summer Olympics. Local media reports say it's considering various options, including limiting spectators and reducing the size of ceremonies. Back in March, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics were postponed to next summer as the coronavirus spread across the globe. Major League Soccer and its players' union have reached an agreement that paves the way for a summer tournament in Florida after the season was suspended by the coronavirus pandemic. The deal was announced by the Major League Soccer Players Association following tense talks that led to some players skipping voluntary workouts and the league threatening a lockout. NHRA drag racing will resume its season in July with back-to-back events at Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis with limited spectators allowed. And that's the Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Charlie Pellet.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at Bloomberg.com/professional.
IBKR is the professional's gateway to the world's markets. IBKR offers commissions starting at $0 for U.S.-listed stocks and ETFs, enhanced price execution via IB Smart Routing, and access to our powerful trader workstation, web, mobile, and API trading platforms. In addition, our clients enjoy the lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, Forex, fixed income, and more on over 125 markets in 31 countries. Learn more or open an IBKR integrated investment account at IBKR.com.
What's the true value?
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment. Feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
delivering the goods,
shipping footballs,
fruit trees,
and dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Dear Dad, Happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And here in London, I'm Caroline Hepke. Good morning. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
We are seeing a continued rally. I mean, we took a little bit of a breather yesterday, right? But we've got this rally underway for the last few weeks, really since the beginning of April, end of March. We've added a ton of points to the DAX. For example, right now it's trading at 12,680. It's up 2% on the day. It's up 1,600 points for the last 2 weeks. And you've got 2% gains in Paris as well in the CAC 40, more than 100 points, the gain there to 51.17. Even in the UK, a more than 1% gain to 6,408, a 67-point gain to 6,408. And I say even in the UK because you had such a run-up in the pound earlier against the dollar. Right now, the cable rate is 126.55. And there's typically an inverse correlation between the pound dollar, I should say, and the FTSE 100. But right now they're both rising quickly. The euro also shot up earlier. It's come back to little change. But right now it's at 113.48. It has gained a ton in the past week as well. And the U.S. dollar, not all weakness for the greenback. It's rising against the yen right now, but to 109. Well, I should say to 109.3. You can buy more than 109 yen for a U.S. dollar. Not bad as gold comes down a bit to 17.09 a troy ounce.
Yeah, I noticed this, that we've been reporting on the terminal. The DAX is up 19% since mid-May. The CAC 17% and the S&P 500 up 9%. So Europe, at least for a few weeks, briefly outperforming Wall Street is what I would to. But also, we've got some other big stories to talk about this morning.
Since the downturn, though, the S&P has trounced the stock 600. Right?
Yes, I know. It all depends on your lens and how many weeks you choose to look at. But yes, exactly. I was pointing out the positive since mid-May. But hey, right, let's also talk about the UK then. This data release that we had out of the Bank of England. Matt, don't know if you saw it, but it reveals the government money that was aimed at helping companies weather the coronavirus here in the UK.
It's an unbelievable story.
Yeah, it's actually gone to a number of very big businesses that are controlled outside of the UK. A number of firms owned by billionaires also are tapping the emergency funding programme that has been backed by taxpayers. So Chanel, Tottenham Hotspur and Carnival amongst the recipients. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of sort of political backlash because of these figures. Let's get all the details with Bloomberg's senior writer Ed Robinson. Ed, why are companies, first of all, with very wealthy owners tapping in on this state aid program? Surely there will be questions asked.
Yeah, I guess the short answer is because they can. I mean, the program was one of many that the government and the Bank of England have rolled out to help companies with lots of employees who contribute to the UK economy ride through this crisis. And so this particular one, loans, they're short-term loans for big companies. And these companies haven't been shy about taking advantage of this program. And the numbers are pretty big. I mean, we're talking loans of 600 million, 250 million. BASF, the German chemicals giant, took 1 billion, which is the maximum. Those are all in pounds.
This is my favorite.
Yeah, pretty big money.
That's my favorite example, by the way, Ed, because BASF didn't take German. It's a German company, of course. Didn't take German loans because the German regulations would have required it to stop paying a dividend and limit pay to senior executives. Instead, this German company with 118,000 employees worldwide and only about 800 working in the UK took £1 billion loan from Great Britain and is still going to pay a dividend.
Yeah, it's in Britain, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, he has urged companies who are applying for these programs not to do that. But there has not been any kind of mandatory prohibition against it.
Yeah. So then the question is going to be asked, as obviously, why was that not into the rules?
They've been very careful, the government, is to not be too prescriptive. And I think that's part of the tradition of British financial regulation, to kind of take that light touch, to be very principles-driven, to not go that next step and actually, mandate that companies do things. They've always preferred here to kind of suggest and recommend that companies do this, take particular actions.
What do the companies say, Ed? I mean, BASF and Bayer, two very German companies, are at the very top of a list of emergency funding for British companies. How do they respond to that?
Well, the companies say, look, we employ thousands of Britons. We contribute
those two companies employed less than 1,000 Britons each, right?
Yes. Well, that is their line. I mean, the companies that I spoke with for this story all kind of made the point that we want to preserve our activities in Britain during this hard time. So we thought we would take advantage of this, but none really have a very good explanation for why they simply wouldn't tap the billionaire families and owners who own them. That's the big question mark, and that is a question that members of Parliament like Margaret Hodge, who's the former head of the Public Accounts Department, that she's asking. She's saying, why are we doing this? Why are we providing state aid to companies that have such deep pockets? Is that fair?
No, absolutely. Well, I suppose at least Tottenham Hotspur had to make the concession that they wouldn't simply spend the money on transfer fees for players. Right. But I think it is going to be very interesting how this falls. Bloomberg senior writer Ed Robinson there taking us through that story. Matt, it's also, I think, an issue that the UK, has rushed, to give the government a little bit of leeway here, that this program is brand new, that they have rushed to get the rules through, and that perhaps it wasn't as well thought out, perhaps as it might have wanted to be.
Well, you can easily come up with the idea that if you're going to give taxpayer money to a company, it can't then turn around and hand it out to its shareholders. I mean, that's not something that takes a long time to wake up to. I just want to point out, it's a great story by Bloomberg, one of the most well-read stories. Biggest beneficiary of UK virus aid plan is the German chemicals company, BASF. As I said, they have 118,000 employees. They got £1 billion from the UK, and they have 834 employees in Great Britain as of December. As for Bayer, which was also one of the biggest recipients of money from the UK, they have 102,000 employees, but 880 of those work in the UK.
Yeah, so read it on the terminal then this morning too. Right, let's get over now to Bloomberg's Roger Hearing, who is standing by with all the latest in world and national news and more on the demonstrations, on the protests in the US. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Caroline. A night of largely peaceful protests as Americans gathered for memorials honouring George Floyd, the unarmed black man whose death sparked nationwide unrest after a police officer knelt on his neck during an arrest. At a memorial service in Minneapolis, the Reverend Al Sharpton spoke about how some black Americans feel.
George Floyd's story has been the story of black folks. The reason we could never be who we wanted and dreamed to be in is you kept your knee on our neck.
Meanwhile, the Secret Service has extended the security fencing around the White House in Washington, putting more distance between protesters and President Donald Trump. Thousands gathered across Hong Kong to commemorate the victims of China's military crackdown in Tiananmen Square. That's despite police outlawing a mass gathering citing the coronavirus pandemic. As well as the main vigil in Victoria Park, many congregated in smaller groups to adhere to social distancing rules. And India and Australia have signed a crucial defence agreement and upgraded their partnership as both nations navigate fraught relations with China. Bloomberg's Arcana Chowdhury has the details.
The move will allow them access to each other's ports and naval bases. It's being done at a time when both nations are facing increasing hostilities from China. Chinese troops have been engaged in a standoff at India's Himalayan borders for over a month. Australia, meanwhile, has been facing a backlash for seeking a global investigation on the coronavirus pandemic. In New Delhi, Archana Chaudhary, Bloomberg Daybreak, Europe.
And France is trying to prevent losing a generation to coronavirus unemployment. Bloomberg's Anya Nussbaum says it means President Macron's ready to review his flagship reforms.
The country is beefing up incentives for apprenticeships. It's also ready to support businesses that keep staff on payroll during a prolonged downturn. The government's move to support apprenticeships and make them available to more companies will cost around 1 billion euros, an official in the president's office said. In Paris, Anya Nussbaum, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing, and this is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much to Roger. Holger Schmieding from Berenberg will be joining us next. Chief Economist, this is Bloomberg.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
When the market is unpredictable, BAM gives you certainty. In the face of volatility and illiquidity, BAM-insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable AA rating from S&P. BAM's insurance protects against everything that causes a default, including natural disasters, financial fraud, pension issues, and economic disruption, like the one we're experiencing right now. BAM. Build America Mutual. Ask your broker about BAM-insured municipal bonds.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT grad...
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City. I'm Anna-Marie Horder, and with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash, European equities and U.S. futures on the front foot this morning. U.S. futures up more than 1% on the S&P 500. FTSE 100 up more than 1%. CAC, DAX, and Eurostoxx 50 both pushing above 2% this morning. This comes as we have fresh stimulus measures. Yesterday was from Berlin. Today, the Trump administration is eyeing about $1 trillion in a new round potentially. So the market seems to be really shrugging off the data point we're going to get, which is potentially U.S. unemployment rate hitting 20%, nearly there. We haven't seen that since the Great Depression. To the downside this morning, Bloomberg Dollar Index down nearly 0.4%. We do see a stronger euro, 1.13, as well as a firmer British pound against the dollar, 1.26. And in the bond market this morning, the 10-year yield is up 1.7 basis points, We are trading 0.84%. And then we're seeing the risk on as well in the commodities market. Brent crude trading north of $40 a barrel. This comes as OPEC is closing in on a deal. They are set to meet this weekend. And gold this morning is down nearly 0.4%. So really a risk-on rally this morning, even though we're going to get a very dire jobs report. That's our Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now here's Roger Herring for more what's going on around the world. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Thanks for that. Now, in Buffalo, New York, an elderly protester is in serious condition after being shoved to the ground by two police officers. The video shows the 75-year-old lying on the ground with blood pooling around his head. The Buffalo police are investigating, and the two officers have been suspended without pay. The UK and the EU are set to end this week's Brexit negotiations with little progress. Officials are still far apart on crucial issues ahead of a key deadline at the end of the month. The EU is hoping to persuade the Prime Minister to compromise at the next summit, but according to Number 10, that may be wishful thinking. And face coverings are to become compulsory for people using public transport here in England. The announcement was made during the government's daily virus briefing at Downing Street. The new rule will be brought in on the 15th of June. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says those who do not wear them will face consequences. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Herring. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
Roger, thanks very much. Now, Nathan Hager is preparing for Bloomberg Daybreak out of the U.S. Nathan, what's ahead?
Well, we're getting ready to finally end what has been a really painful week here in the U.S., Matt. There is no end to the protests over police brutality in this country. Just heard Roger's report about that elderly protester getting knocked down in Buffalo. But overall, things are gradually getting more peaceful, and that's putting more attention on the hardline stance that President Trump took to the demonstrations earlier this week. We're going to take a look at the backlash against that and where it leaves the president politically now as we try to get past and grapple with some of the issues that are underlying these demonstrations. Brown University Political Science Chair Wendy Schiller is back with us this morning. That's as we await the latest sign of the economic pain that this country's been through over the last several months thanks to the coronavirus. We will wait the May jobs report, another historically bad print expected. Wells Fargo senior economist Mark Vittner is with us, along with Lalitap Cholu of JOHCM, as well as FS chief U.S. economist Laura Rain, all joining me and Karen Moscow this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak. Hope you'll join us for it. Back to you, Matt.
Not only will I join you for it, but I've got, for me, a new way of listening.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I used to always just Google Bloomberg Radio and then go from the website. But what I do now, I mean, I could have done it the whole time. I guess it's been there for a while. But on our app, on the mobile phone app,
right,
you can just click on the radio button, which has been so much easier because I had the mobile app open all the time. So I just push radio.
On your home voice command device, have you got one of those in your kitchen?
I haven't. No, I don't have Alexa or Siri or anything at home. I mean, I have Siri, but I wouldn't dare. Obviously, no one wants to use Siri. But I just put it up.
It gives you such a pleasant voice, introducing Bloomberg Radio to you with that pleasant Siri voice.
Well, I'll try it through her next time. But it's just so easy on the Bloomberg app, and it's my new thing lately. Nathan, thanks very much. Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow coming up. If you're listening on Sirius XM, channel 119, you'll hear them. If you're listening on London DAB digital radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
All right, let's talk about the markets then this morning and the top economic news. So the German economy is set to shrink 7% this year, even though the recovery is underway. And European markets, having said that, the Xetra DAX has been the outperformer this morning and in the last few weeks. We're up by 1.9% after that ECB bond buying program was increased even more than had been previously expected. Joining us this morning is Holger Schmieding, who is chief economist at Berenberg and joins us this morning. Holger, great to have you on the show again. You've been talking about your forecast, a tick-shaped recovery, and actually that has been strengthened thanks to the ECB's move to ramp up the bond buying program. And yet, so many economists and analysts actually want more from the ECB in the months ahead.
Well, good morning. First of all, I think we are roughly on track for the stick-shaped recovery. The European Central Bank, as well as finance ministers, are basically doing whatever it takes. After the big announcements of this week, extra 600 billion from the ECB, plus some further tweaks to their policies, and the German fiscal package, I think we shouldn't be looking for much more for the next few weeks. We should simply lean back and see, especially at the ECB level, whether, say, 3 months from now, there is any need to do more. What is, in my view, good enough, both for the economy, especially for confidence that counts, and as well as for markets, is we know if there were to be a need for central banks and finance ministers to do more, they would do so. They remain in whatever it takes mode.
What kind of repercussions is all of this money flooding into markets going to have, Holger?
Well, it's not going to lead to an immediate economic boom. It's not going to lead to an immediate spending spree. It will not lead to a dramatic increase, say, in credit growth and the like. It is largely, you could say, a safety net. We know there is enough liquidity, and liquidity will not be a concern. We know that all countries in Europe can fund themselves, their fiscal programs, at rates that are tolerable. We know that companies should be able to get from their banks a loan at good conditions. At least the refinancing options for banks at the ECB are generous. So I see this mostly as a safety net, and knowing that the safety net is there is simply good for confidence, which will over time lead to a rebound in spending, but, well, a modest one.
Do you think that there's a disconnect, Holger, right now between the story in the markets that Matt and I have been talking about all morning about the gains that we see in European equities and indeed in the US and the macro story that is going on? Does that mean that there is kind of what some people are talking about, Wall Street, Main Street collision coming at some point?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that in March, markets went the other way. Markets were in complete panic, which was not related, in my view, to the genuine risks, which were there but not quite as bad. Now markets may be at risk of being a bit too optimistic. Markets always explore the upside and the downside. I do think that on, say, a 6 to 12 month view, indeed, markets have further upside. But we first have to get through the risk of a second wave, which we don't think will materialize, but near term there are still risks ahead. Also, the economy will take a bit longer to recover than markets at the moment may be hoping for. We look for a tick-shaped recovery, but not quite a V-recovery. So I would say there is, as to the economic data, some support for markets having a more positive outlook than they did, say, a month ago. But there is not enough economic support for saying markets should now get straight back to where they were in February. That would be overdone.
So you're looking for a check mark or a swoosh, as we might say in the U.S., in terms of recovery.
Yes, you might call it something like a swoosh. Yes, it is. Initially, it will go up fairly nicely, but then it will flatten out somewhat over time. That's what we call the tick mark recovery. So when the lockdowns are eased, supply and demand, to some extent, comes back immediately. But if restaurants go from 0 to 50, with 100 being normal, that's great, but it's nowhere close to normal yet.
Holger, just 30 seconds here. Why do you think the euro has gained so much strength in the last couple of sessions?
Because investors globally realize that Europe is getting its act together, and also the flow of money from emerging markets into the US, which pushed up the dollar, seems to be fading a bit.
All right. Cool.
Holger, thank you so much for joining us. That was a very good 30-second answer in response to that question about the euro. Holger Schmieding, chief economist at Berenberg, joining us this morning. So yes, he does still see a swoosh-shaped recovery.
And he will be joining Tom and Francine on surveillance next. So if you want to hear more from Holger Schmieding, you have so many options now. I've realized with the Bloomberg app, you can click on the TV icon on the Bloomberg mobile phone app. You can turn on an actual television if you're my age or older. And you can also look on Bloomberg.com to get more from Holger Schmieding. If you're listening on Sirius XM in New York, good morning to you. Futures higher as it looks like we're getting set for a risk on Friday. The risk on mood to spread across the Atlantic from Europe to the U.S. Looking at Dow Jones mini futures up 1.25%. This is Bloomberg.
Are you looking for senior care for your...
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Pauline. Love may be blind, but it has a new smell.
Pauline, the new fragrance from Euro Millions winner Pauline Hinchcliffe.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £25 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Dear Dad, happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Friday, June 5th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
A 10th day of protest brings peaceful rallies to most cities, though clashes continue in New York.
Wall Street awaits a U.S. jobs report likely to show unemployment nearing 20%.
Global stocks rally on stimulus measures from Europe and word of the next rescue package from Congress.
New York City prepares for phase 1 of reopening, while Governor Cuomo urges protesters to get tested for the coronavirus. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Another roadblock for the baseball season. The NBA return is set, and Drew Brees apologizing.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
And good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by SEI. Asset managers don't get results that are off the charts when their solutions are off the shelf. Learn how SEI's operating platform can turn infrastructure into a competitive advantage at SEIC.com/IMS.
And U.S. futures are gaining ahead of the monthly jobs report, 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 28 points this morning. Dow futures up 336. NASDAQ futures up 51. The DAX in Germany's up 2%. So is the CAC in Paris, and the FTSE 100 up 1.2%. 10-year Treasury down 4/32, yield 0.83%. Yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5% or 57 cents at $37.98 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.7% or $12.40 at $17.15 an ounce. The euro is at 1.1330 against the dollar. This data check brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com. Nathan.
Karen, we begin in Minneapolis, where hundreds gathered to honor the memory of George Floyd. The memorial was attended by political leaders, musicians, actors, and human rights advocates from across the country and was capped off by a fiery eulogy from the Reverend Al Sharpton.
It is not a normal funeral. It is not a normal circumstance, but it's too common, and we need to deal with it.
Thousands also gathered in Brooklyn, New York to honor Floyd's memory. George Floyd's brother Terrence spoke at the gathering in Brooklyn's Cadman Plaza.
I'm proud of the protests, but I'm not proud of the destruction.
Memorials in Minneapolis and New York were two of several gatherings across the country in memory of George Floyd.
A 10th day of protests brought peaceful rallies to most cities, though clashes erupted again in New York. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us now with the very latest. John, good morning.
Karen, thousands across New York City continued protests well past an 8 p.m. curfew. Large gatherings continued into the evening in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. Police arrested dozens after confining and then charging demonstrators who defied the curfew, though there were fewer violent confrontations than in days past. Upstate in Buffalo, New York, video of a confrontation between police and a protester has gone viral. Footage shows an elderly man pushed to the ground by police. He hits the ground and a pool of blood forms near his head. Two officers involved in the incident have been suspended. Millions have watched the footage, including New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who calls the use of force, quote, wholly unjustified and utterly disgraceful. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. In California, protests have turned peaceful, and that has local officials lifting curfews across the state. Here with more is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
San Francisco, Los Angeles anxiously taking the step and awaiting the results. In doing so, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti said, I'm a little scared about that, but sometimes fear is what you've got to do. The ACLU, which had sued Los Angeles and the city of San Bernardino on behalf of Black Lives Matter for suppressing First Amendment guarantees to political protest and freedom of movement, applauded the end of the order. Sacramento, which was slow to put one in place, left its on. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Ed, thank you. Turning to financial markets now, today's monthly payrolls report is the main event for investors. Economists predict a loss of 7.5 million jobs in May, with an unemployment rate north of 19%. We get more from Bloomberg Economics correspondent Michael McKee.
The focus will be on the unemployment rate, which should rise to a level not seen since the Great Depression. May's actual job losses should be about half the number seen in April, although they will cover more industries. Unemployment will spread from restaurants, bars, airlines, and hotels to retail and other businesses hit by a prolonged loss of demand. The hope is that as bad as the numbers will be, they will mark the bottom of the crisis. The slow drop of initial jobless claims suggests job losses may be more limited in June. That may help unemployment decline at least a little this month. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thanks. Global stocks are rallying in the wake of fiscal and monetary measures out of Europe, and now we're learning more about plans for the next round of stimulus from the White House. Here with details is Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Sources tell us Trump administration officials expect to spend up to $1 trillion in the next stimulus package. The president says he wants an infrastructure package in the bill, though we are told he has not made a final decision. Action on the measure is likely more than a month away. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says there are no plans for a package until after lawmakers return from their next recess on July 20th. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Jeff, thank you. Oil gaining as OPEC and its allies prepare to extend production cuts. There's been a breakthrough in negotiations after Russia and Saudi Arabia struck a deal with members on compliance quotas. We get more from Bloomberg Energy reporter James Thornhill.
Really what the wrangling has been over is trying to get these junior partners in OPEC to carry out their side of the bargain in order to get an agreement on extending the output cuts by a month. It remains to be seen, of course, whether a month will be long enough to maintain the price rally we've seen, but it looks like this deal will get rubber stamped over the weekend.
And NYMEX crude oil at $38.07 a barrel.
On the corporate front, shares of American Airlines are surging in early trading. The carrier says it'll boost July flights 74% compared with this month. That has American shares up nearly 14%. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. And at 5:07 on Wall Street, we bring in Amy Morris for a check of what else is going on around the world. Happy Friday, Amy.
All right, happy Friday, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is concerned that the crowded protests with thousands of demonstrators could lead to more COVID-19 cases. He says protesters have an obligation to get tested for the coronavirus.
If you were at a protest, go get a test, please. The protesters have a civic duty here also.
Fewer people in New York are now being hospitalized for COVID-19, and some stores in New York City can reopen starting Monday, but some of the biggest stores won't. Coach Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman will not be opening any of their fashion boutiques, and major retailers say they aren't opening for curbside pickup on June 8th, which is when the first phase of recovery is set for New York City. Macy's says they plan to participate, but they're just going to take this day by day. New Jersey's non-essential retail business can open starting June 15th. Stores will be limited to 50% capacity. Customers are required to wear face coverings. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy announced the latest step to restart that economy as the virus put more than 1 in 9 New Jersey residents out of work since mid-March. As businesses prepare to reopen, the governor says social distancing must remain the routine. New York Police Commissioner Dermot Shea says the violence seen at the protests is, quote, not what democracy looks like. He says the incidents are part of a larger anti-police sentiment fueled by online rhetoric and misinformation.
Let's be a little mature and a little responsible. And before you start commenting on a 6-second video, do a little homework and get the facts.
And a judge in New York has ruled that the New York Police Department can hold protest detainees for more than 24 hours. Judge James Burke says curfew violators and criminal looters can be kept in custody because of the pandemic preventing live arraignments, which causes delays. Job losses and pay cuts impacted all of America, but the worst of it might have been in New York, where almost half of all residents suffered a drop in income, especially in households with children. 55.7% of all New York City households took a hit. Service, retail, and blue-collar workers who can't do their jobs from home suffered the most cuts. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Amy, thank you. It is 5:09 on Wall Street and time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashower.
All right, good morning, Nathan. The NBA voted 29-1 to approve the plan for the season that was shut down March 12th to resume. 22 of the 30 teams will head to Orlando on July 7th and begin games there July 31st. They'll each play 8 games over the next 16 days. The results added to what was done earlier, and then the regular season will be over, and the 16-team playoff will begin. The players on board. Commissioner Adam Silver said he had them in the loop throughout, although Union Chief Michelle Roberts did say she was not aware of a plan to start the 2021 season as early as December 1st. But for the most part, harmony in the NBA as opposed to Major League Baseball. The owners keep rejecting player proposals and vice versa. The union, after a 2-hour conference call yesterday, quote, roundly rejected MLB's latest pitch. They feel there was already an agreement in place back in March not to cut pay. Drew Brees apologized not once but twice yesterday, first in a lengthy online post and then again later in the day in an Instagram video.
I wish I would have laid out what was on my heart in regards to the George Floyd murder, Ahmaud Arbery, the years and years of social injustice, police brutality, and the need for so much reform and change in regards to legislation and so many other things. to bring equality to our black communities.
He said his comments about kneeling during the national anthem completely missed the mark. John Stashow with Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
Okay, John, thank you. And join us tonight for the Bloomberg Business of Sports show when we'll speak with Jim Van Stone. He's the president of business operations and chief commercial officer at Monumental Sports. You can catch that conversation tonight at 7 and tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio, or listen to it anytime by subscribing to the Bloomberg Business of Sports show wherever you get your podcasts. Futures moving higher ahead of the May jobs report release. S&P futures up almost 30 points right now. Dow futures up 363. NASDAQ futures higher by 54 points. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
Here's Emily Chang.
FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel has said President Trump is trying to turn the FCC into his personal speech police. She joined us earlier.
Section 230 has been around for decades, and it's really important for online speech. It protects all sorts of online expression, but this executive order asks the FCC to make rules for Section 230 so that the agency would give a green light or a red light for what kind of speech can go online and what should be taken down. I don't think that's right.
The FCC hasn't taken any action on this yet. Do you think they will?
Well, according to the executive order, the Department of Commerce is going to file a petition with the FCC asking us to take action sometime before the end of July.
So is that an appropriate role for the FCC? I mean, if Chairman Pai, who controls the agenda, was here with us, what would you recommend to him?
I don't think the Federal Communications Commission should be the president's speech police. I think we've got a First Amendment and we need to honor it.
That said, Section 230 is, as you mentioned, a decades-old law. Do you think that Section 230 can really remain and should remain untouched?
Absolutely. But here's what I know. It's up to Congress to write the laws. The president can't issue a new law through executive order or ask an agency like mine to rewrite the law.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are rallying while treasuries and the dollar fall as investors focus on government stimulus and shrug off an upcoming U.S. jobs report that is expected to show the highest unemployment since the 1930s. Airlines, cruise ship operators, and hotels are leading gains among European equities as investors scoop up beaten-up shares. The Stock 600 index is headed for its best week in 2 months, and the euro has rallied for 9 days, the longest winning streak since 2004. Oil looks set for its 6th weekly gain after OPEC Plus reached a tentative agreement to extend record production cuts. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 30 points, Dow futures up 367, Nasdaq futures up 53. The DAX in Germany's up 2%, CAC in Paris up 2.3%, and the FTSE 100 up 1.25%. 10-year Treasury down 7/32, yield 0.84%. The yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is up 2.1% or 77 cents at $38.18 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.7% or $12.40 at $17.15 an ounce. The euro 1.1332 against the dollar, British pound 1.2640, and the yen at 109.30. And today we are watching for the May jobs report at 8:30 Wall Street time. Then at 3, it's consumer credit. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy, good morning.
All right, thank you, Karen. Good morning to you. Curfews didn't mean much to protesters as demonstrations continue. Want to get a live report? Now let's go to Bloomberg's John Tucker. John.
There were large protests throughout New York City. Police surrounded a group of protesters in the Bronx defying a curfew and then charged at them as they refused to disperse. Dozens were arrested. Buffalo's police commissioner suspended 2 officers after a video of them knocking over an elderly protester went viral. Elsewhere, protests were mostly peaceful nationwide. In California, cities and counties cautiously lifted curfews after days of sporadic mayhem were replaced by peaceful protests. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, thank you, John. And other news we are watching for you. The Trump administration envisions up to $1 trillion for the next round of stimulus funding. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says lawmakers will not be taking up that measure until July. And a Chinese hacking group has targeted the personal email accounts of Joe Biden's campaign staff. Google says the company observed the Chinese activity against the campaign as well as Iranian phishing attempts against personal email accounts for Trump campaign staff. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thank you. It's 5:20 now on Wall Street. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak. And after the last week or so of social unrest, market attention will turn to the economic pain left behind by the coronavirus pandemic as we get the May jobs report at 8:30 Wall Street time. Ahead of that, we're pleased to be joined by 2 guests this morning. Mark Vittner is senior economist at Wells Fargo, as well as Lali Topcholu with us this morning, portfolio manager at JOHCM. Good to have both of you with us this morning. Thanks so much for being here. Start with you, Mark. Bloomberg surveys are predicting another 7.5 million jobs lost on top of the more than 20 million in April. The unemployment rate rising north of 19%. 15%. What's your view on what we're going to get today, and where is the pain likely to be felt?
We're pretty close to consensus. We have a decline of 8 million jobs for the month of May. We're also looking for some downward revision to the previously published data, and the unemployment rate, we're right at 19.5%, but I've been telling folks that there's about a 5 percentage point risk to the upside because they had a difficulty classifying workers that were employed but not at work. And so folks that were on temporary layoff, some of them were not classified as unemployed in the April data, and they may fix that. So we may see an even larger drop in the rise in the unemployment rate.
I'll turn to you, Lolly, next. We're seeing really strong gains once again in the futures markets. The rally has been pretty consistent over the last week here. It looks like the markets have been looking past the damage done by the coronavirus. Can that continue?
Good morning, both. I think that's certainly true. The market, I think, it's interesting. Even the credit markets, which never actually looks forward that most of the time, everybody has just sort of written off 2020. I think everybody's past it. Everybody's looking into 2021. And the market is responding to the rate of change. And I think, the employment numbers is a critical data, so is the GDP. And unfortunately, the data is messy. And I think the risk you have is that there may be some false positives where the market responds and we think we're off the bottom and we're improving substantially. Now, we're going to improve, right? Because the drop in 2Q was so bad in the previous month. We're bound to improve a little bit. The question is how sustainable and where we're going to level off. And I think that is still to be known. We don't know it.
You think we're off the bottom, Mark? You think we're going to see that in the report today?
I think you're not going to see that in the report today because we're looking back at May, and they're actually looking at early May because this covers the last 2 weeks of April, the first 2 weeks of May when the economy was still in full retreat. The recovery really began in late May and early June, the period that we're in right now. And so a month from now, we might see gains in employment. Sometimes it takes a while for that to get picked up in the data. But I think what the markets and I think what investors are looking at is that nothing was fundamentally broken before the coronavirus hit us. And so far, because of Fed action and some very well-targeted policy moves on the fiscal side, nothing has broken. And with the economy, with activity now beginning to pick up, you look at some of these daily numbers from Apple and Google and to other firms, it looks like the economy is coming back. Where I think we may be disappointed is that the pace of recovery is likely to be agonizingly slow. And there are some things that are broken. The global trading system is broken. The supply chain is still going to be under a lot of pressure. And consumer confidence, I mean, it's been fairly resilient, but I think that there's a real dichotomy between what's happened with professional workers that have been able to work at home and folks that work in customer-facing occupations that have not. So I think that, I do think there are some things that are broken that the markets might be looking past right now.
And how could the markets react to some of those factors, Lolly, if there are issues with things like supply chains, and now with so much central bank support, adding a whole other factor to corporate balance sheets, raising questions about whether some companies could get over leveraged once this crisis is on the other side of it.
I mean, that's true. I mean, I think the central bank, and don't forget ECB that came out yesterday, which was obviously much better than expected, and it looks like they're moving in the right direction. Central bank supported hope, and the positive movement it's there, and you can't really ignore it. But again, I keep going back to the same thing. A lot of these companies, as you just highlight, there are two things that are happening. One is the stronger is going to come out stronger at the end of this. And if you actually look at some of the companies that have been hit, that have been at the epicenter of this, one, they've been able to raise funding, which is excellent, thanks to the central banks. Two, they are also getting leaner. There will be some permanent job cuts at the end of this as we come out of it, because now the companies are going to get leaner on the way out. And that I don't think people have factored in. And the third is, yes, that is going on, and the leverage is going to look terrible. And again, I keep highlighting this to our clients. These are debts. They're not grants. They have to be paid back. So the future, the pace of the recovery, and how your cash flows recover will matter a whole ton. Fast forward 12 to 18 months.
And Mark, that raises a lot of questions, doesn't it, about what the shape of the recovery is going to be and what's going to be left after this coronavirus crisis is done. If we have more of a gap in solvency between big cap companies and some of the smaller and medium sized businesses, I mean, what does that mean for the U.S. economy going forward?
You know, I think it's going to be like everything else we've seen this past decade, and it's going to look like whatever somebody thinks it looks like. We're going to have what looks like a V recovery in the very early stages of the recovery because we'll have fallen so hard that the percentage increases are going to look pretty large. But I think that's going to peter out in 4 or 5 months, and then we're going to have something where growth is going to improve at a much slower rate. I refer to it as a square root sign, where you have a little bit of an uptick followed by not necessarily flattish growth, but what I call a bouncy swoosh, where we're likely to see a lot of volatility. There's still a lot of unknowns out there. I mean, the biggest being what happens with the virus over the summer. Are we going to see a second wave? And all this unrest and all these protests, will they bring about a second wave this summer? I would hope that the virus behaves like other viruses in summertime, and that the transmission slows down because it's sunnier and hotter, and the droplets don't last as long. But we don't know, and we don't know what happens in the fall too. And already businesses and universities have altered their business plans so that they're going to start a little earlier, shut down a little earlier in the fall. That's going to have some impact. Just the fear of a second wave, I think, will alter the shape of the business cycle.
You describe it as a bouncy swoosh. Lalitap Cholu, do you think that's the kind of shape that we could see in the markets as we head into the rest of this year?
I've never been good at shapes. Geometry is a really bad class for me in school. I think I agree with the views. I think there are still a lot of unknowns, and I think, and I always say this: don't ignore the human psychology of this. Right? If you were a portfolio manager and you panicked and you sold at the bottom in March, and then you missed the recovery. Now you have 6 months to make up your returns, and that psychology is a very, very powerful one. So there's part of that as well, because then if you don't catch up, it becomes a career risk at the end of the day. We're conservative with the way we think about it. I call it the barbell strategy. We have cash, we have investment grade corporates, we have defensive equities, and we have a small bucket of cyclical equities. If the rebound surprise on the upside, we get to benefit in that. I call it the 25% club.
Thanks so much to both of you for your insights. Really appreciate it as we await the release of the May unemployment report. It is due, or the May employment report, I should say. It's due out at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time from the Labor Department. Lalitap Cholu, portfolio manager at JOHCM, along with Wells Fargo Securities senior economist Mark Vittner. Again, thanks to both of you for being with us this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. We are coming up to 5:30 on Wall Street, and we're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's shift gears now and get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour, beginning in Minneapolis, where hundreds gathered to honor the memory of George Floyd. The memorial was attended by political leaders and public figures from across the country. Thousands also gathered in Brooklyn, New York, to honor Floyd's memory, including his brother Terrence.
I'm proud of the protests, but I'm not proud of the destruction.
Memorials in Minneapolis and New York were two of several gatherings across the country to honor the memory of George Floyd.
And a 10th day of protests brought peaceful rallies to most cities, though clashes erupted again in New York. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
Nathan, good morning. Thousands across New York City continued protests well past an 8 p.m. curfew. Police arrested dozens across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, though there were fewer violent incidents than in days past. Upstate in Buffalo, video of a confrontation between police and protester has gone viral. Millions have watched footage of an elderly man pushed to the ground by police. The man hits the ground and a pool of blood forms near his head. 2 officers involved in that incident have been suspended. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Turning to financial markets now. Today's monthly payrolls report is the main event for investors. Economists predict a loss of 7.5 million jobs in May, with an unemployment rate north of 19%. We get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Bloomberg Economics says April's employment data reflected the eye of the storm in terms of payroll cuts. Today's data covering May should reveal the breadth of the weakness, cuts across industries. Since the outbreak exploded in March, U.S. states have processed more than 40 million claims for unemployment benefits, though there are hints demand is moderating as the economy reopens. Federal Reserve officials nonetheless caution high employment will persist. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. Global stocks are rallying in the wake of fiscal and monetary measures out of Europe, and now we're learning more about plans for the next round of stimulus from the White House. Sources tell us the Trump administration expects to spend up to $1 trillion in the next stimulus package, though there will be a wait. Action on a measure likely won't get underway till late July.
S&P futures are higher this morning, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 23 points. Dow futures up 293. NASDAQ futures up 36. The 10-year Treasury down 7/32, yield 0.84%. And the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.7%, up 65 cents at $38.06 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.8%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you very much. It is 5:33 on Wall Street, and Amy Morris is back with a look at what else is going on around the world. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. New York City's non-essential shops, from clothiers to toy stores, will soon be allowed to offer limited services starting Monday, but some of the city's biggest stores won't be participating.
Retailers are wrestling with reopening for pickup as they try to determine whether it would be both safe and profitable. Curbside assistance is different in cities than suburban shopping centers and strip malls, with urban consumers reliant on public transport. Though pickup is sure to lift sales with nearby shoppers, it would need to drive enough business to make the cost worth it. On top of that, some Manhattan shops have been damaged in looting, and storefronts on shopping thoroughfares like Fifth Avenue, Broadway, and Madison Avenue have been boarded up with plywood to deter damage. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Just a few more details about what you can expect, as a number of major retailers in New York City say they won't be reopening on Monday. That includes Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman, and Coach. As the first phase of reopening is set to begin, makeup purveyor Ulta has no timeline set to reopen, and Tiffany's has set a tentative reopen date for June 11th. And while Macy's is in talks with New York Mayor Bill de Blasio's office, it has no public plan for opening its flagship store, which was, as you know, targeted by looters earlier this week. Now, as for the fight against the coronavirus, there are new signs of hope in New York, where new COVID hospitalizations dropped to a new low. Still, a warning from Governor Andrew Cuomo.
If you're going to protest intelligently. Remember, the COVID virus is still out there.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says the idea of keeping schools closed in the fall may not be necessary. New York University has been looking at leasing thousands of hotel rooms to house students for the fall semester. Sources tell Bloomberg News the university looked for rooms within walking distance of its Manhattan campus. Now, it's not clear if that search is ongoing. The school typically announces room assignments in July. The university's website says it does expect students to begin the fall semester on time. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Thanks, Nathan. Until Wednesday, Drew Brees had an almost perfect image, not only a record-breaking quarterback on
field, but he had done so much off it, especially in New Orleans following Katrina. And then the comments about not respecting anyone who would kneel during the national anthem. So yesterday, Breeze posted a lengthy apology and later a video. There was a 2-hour-long virtual team meeting, and after it, two of his Saints teammates, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, his star running back and receiver, say they forgive him. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver with some interesting comments following the release of the plan for the NBA's return starting July 31st. He said some of the league's older coaches would be more prone to contracting the virus, might not coach from the bench. This took some, like 65-year-old Alvin Gentry of the Pelicans, by surprise. Rick Carlisle of the Mavs, who's 60 and heads up the NBA Coaches Association, says he spoke with Silver, says the commissioner may have jumped the gun with his comments. The vote on the plan was 29-1. Only Portland voted no. NBA announced the draft will be on October 15th. The 2021 season scheduled to start December 1st with a full 82 games. More details on the NHL's plan. The first round of their playoffs will be best of 5. All series after that a best of 7, and it won't be a bracket. They will reseed after each round. The Baseball Players Association roundly rejected the owner's latest proposal. They seem dug in. They don't want their pay cut any further, and they'd rather not play at all in 2020 if it is. 5 Alabama football players reportedly have coronavirus after informal workouts on campus. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
All right, John, thanks. It's 5:37 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on WHAS in Louisville. Ford is putting off plans to have salaried employees return to offices.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting JCPenney plans to permanently close 9 stores in Florida.
I'm Caroline Hepke on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the Bank of England's revelation that the biggest recipient of emergency funding for businesses in the UK was Germany's BASF.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WBBM in Chicago, I'm reporting that the Justice Department has issued formal demands to the country's biggest meat packers for information over potential antitrust violations.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting Alex Partners says automakers have entered a profit desert.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. It's 5:38 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with the cover on President Trump's political gamble to reopen the economy. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device at youtube.com. Search Bloomberg Global News. Coming up to 5:39 now on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report. For that, we bring back Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
New Jersey's non-essential retail businesses can start opening June 15th, with stores limited to 50% capacity and customers required to wear face coverings. Governor Phil Murphy announced the latest step to restart the economy as he talked about the 1.2 million residents who are now unemployed. The delay of Major League Baseball's 2020 season because of the coronavirus cost Citi Field bonds their investment grade rating. S&P cut its grade on about $700 million worth of muni bonds issued for New York Mets' 42,000-seat stadium in Queens to BB+, one step into junk status. Sources tell Bloomberg New York University has explored leasing thousands of hotel rooms to house students for the fall semester. They say the school looked for rooms within walking distance of its Manhattan campus in recent weeks. Representatives for NYU did not respond to emails seeking comment. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
All right, Ed, thanks. Now some other stories we're following. Shares of American Airlines surging in early trading. The carrier says it'll boost July flights 74% compared with this month, signaling travelers are returning to the skies more quickly than expected. Americans up more than 13% in the pre-market. Shares of Slack are down more than 12% in early trading. The company citing business uncertainty is withdrawing its annual billings forecast. Investors take that as a sign Slack isn't confident it'll benefit as much from the work-from-home era as some might expect. And shares of Gap fell 5% in extended trading. The retailer reported a steep decline in quarterly sales as the coronavirus shifts consumer spending away from apparel and office attire. Futures moving higher ahead of the May jobs report. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC. This is your Bloomberg Real Estate.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
If you can build that flat pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a Global News Update.
Special report, protests across America. Rain fell as protesters descended upon the nation's capital.
Just one of the many chants in front of the White House Thursday night as demonstrators gathered once again to protest the killing of George Floyd and other black Americans.
We're a peaceful group that is just honestly wants justice, for Breonna Taylor, for George Floyd, for Trayvon Martin, for Ahmaud, for all the other black lives that have been lost for being unarmed and just from being black.
As the sky opened up with pelting rain, wind, lightning, and thunder, the protesters were undaunted. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Attorneys say 2 of 3 Minneapolis police charged in the death of George Floyd were rookies, barely off probation. Attorney Earl Gray says former officer Thomas Lane had no choice but to follow instruction from senior officers. I'm John Trout.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Is it as ominous this time around?
They talk with the most interesting people.
Are they taking this seriously?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update brought to you by SEI. Imagine your asset management firm's operational infrastructure as a competitive advantage. Let SEI show you how at SEIC.com/IMS. Stocks are rallying while treasuries and the dollar fall as investors focus on government stimulus and shrug off an upcoming U.S. jobs report that is expected to show the highest unemployment since the 1930s. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 23 points. Dow futures up 298. NASDAQ futures up 36. The DAX in Germany's up 1.5%. 10-year Treasury down 8/30 seconds, yield 0.85%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is up 2% or 74 cents at $38.15 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Thank you, Karen. Demonstrations continued into the night as protesters ignored curfew warnings. Let's get a live report now from Bloomberg's John Tucker. John.
And Amy, there were large protests throughout New York City. Police surrounded a group of protesters in the Bronx, defying a curfew, and then charged at them as they refused to disperse. Dozens were arrested. Buffalo's police commissioner suspended 2 officers after a video of them knocking over an elderly protester went viral. Elsewhere, protests were mostly peaceful nationwide. In California, cities and counties cautiously lifted curfews after days of sporadic mayhem were replaced by peaceful protests. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. Other news we are watching for you. President Trump's re-election operation plans to begin in-person voting and training in voter contact in some parts of the U.S. next week. For the first time since the coronavirus outbreak, the Republican National Committee says volunteers will follow local guidelines, wearing masks, limiting head counts, and social distancing. And Trump administration officials increasingly expect to spend up to $1 trillion in the next round of economic stimulus, although action on the measure is not likely to happen until at least next month. The president wants the legislation to include an infrastructure package. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 5:49 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager, joined now by Wendy Schiller, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University, at a time where it seems like the country's been, it doesn't even seem like it, Wendy, the country has been through so much, among the street protests now, on top of the coronavirus recovery, job losses. It seems almost crass to ask where this leaves President Trump politically, but I mean, that is a question this morning.
Well, I mean, President Trump's campaign is, I mean, if you think of pure campaign strategy, very well funded. He won once and he defied all expectations. So the idea that Trump will decide, oh, I have to pivot, I have to change my way, I'm going to lose, I don't think that's in his psyche. I don't think that's in his perspective, because whoever tells him he's going to lose, they'll say, well, you thought I was going to lose last time. And I think it's very interesting about ramping up sort of campaign on-the-ground operations. You know, Trump has to figure out a way to get people to believe that things will get better if they give him 4 more years, because things look like in America right now they couldn't get much worse. And that's a big challenge for him. But in terms of normalizing, having somebody knock on the door and say, what do you think about President Trump? He's a good president, makes people, or could make people in some parts of the country, feel like things are getting more normal.
We had the backlash among even some Republicans this week to the president's pretty heavy-handed approach to the demonstrations, bringing in the military in Washington, D.C. Is that something that could hurt him if we have people like his former defense secretary and now Lisa Murkowski coming out against the president's tactics?
Well, I think there's a pretty significant and serious question for people who are concerned that Trump wants to use the military, for example, for domestic law enforcement. Ethan, we've talked about this. That's against the law, against the spirit of the Constitution. You know, that's where you have to start thinking: would the military support President Trump? Would the military themselves follow those orders? Would they, in fact, overrule, state police, local government, state government? I mean, those starts to be, the unraveling of the democracy. That's an extraordinarily serious question. That's really, I think, distinct and separate from whether a couple of Republicans in the Senate criticize the president in a fairly tame way, frankly, and probably will continue to vote for his agenda if he puts one forward to them.
We've seen the president spending money in states that he might have thought were going to be easy wins compared to 4 years ago. A little bit of a reversal on that. Where is he most vulnerable right now?
Well, it's a perfect question, right? Because we're looking at, sort of the end of May, early June, and those polls, they can stay steady. We know that in Obama's reelection campaign, the polls in June were about the same as the polls in November and about the same as the outcomes. So things sort of settled in June and didn't change. Places like Ohio, Trump is behind slightly in a Fox News poll, another news organization. That's, maybe the poll is, not super accurate, but it's a fairly probably Republican leaning poll. And the problem for the Democrats is that Republicans may stop answering the phone. Real Trump supporters may say, I'm not answering a CNN poll, I'm not answering a Gallup poll, but I might answer a Fox News poll. So watching polls even, you have to look for partisan slant. But he's behind in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and even in Ohio and Florida. And you have to ask yourself, even if the margins change, why is he behind? These are states he won last time. And that's what the campaign, especially what the Trump campaign, is going to try to figure out. And that's how they're going to target their messaging going forward.
Our last 30 seconds here, though, he's not behind in fundraising. That's got to count for something.
Well, exactly. On the ground organizing. That's what I mean. Getting out the door, contacting people. Biden still in the basement, theoretically, although he seems to be emerging a little bit more. And does he have the on the ground when maybe a lot of those people who might volunteer for the Democratic Party are consumed by sort of the emerging, the current crisis surrounding George Floyd? So the question is, how does the Democratic Party reshape its energy towards the campaign? And that's a challenge the Democrats, I think, have yet to figure out how to meet.
Professor Schiller, always good having you on. Thanks so much. Wendy Schiller chairs the Political Science Department at Brown University. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. Now it's time for our daily Bloomberg Law Brief, exploring legal issues in the news. It's brought to you by American Arbitration Association. International trade or business dispute resolved faster with the International Center for Dispute Resolution, the leader in alternative dispute resolution around the world, ICDR.org. Today we're looking at Minnesota's Attorney General filing a new, tougher charge of second-degree murder against the former police officer responsible for the death of George Floyd. He's also charged the 3 other former officers at the scene with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. For more on the charges, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig.
Ellie, let's talk about how this was handled. Prosecutors initially charged just the one officer with a lesser charge. Could they have brought these new charges against all 4 officers from the start and perhaps helped to quell some of the protests?
Yeah, June, they could have charged this as a second-degree murder from the start, and I wrote a piece the day after the initial charge came out saying they should have charged second-degree from the start. I'm not sure what impact that would have had on the riots. That's a complicated question. So the initial charge came from the Hennepin County attorney, which is sort of the local DA, essentially. If you looked at that complaint, it was baffling in some ways. He left out really important evidence of guilt. For example, the initial complaint lists some of the things that George Floyd said while he was pinned down, but it omits the most important things he said, which were, "I can't breathe," and "please don't kill me." As a prosecutor, that's inexplicable why you would leave that out. So I had my doubts about, at a minimum, the competency of the Hennepin County attorney. Now, a couple days after that, the Minnesota State Attorney General took over the case, which I think was absolutely the right move. And then a few days after that, he added a second-degree murder charge, which I think was the right move. I think it's supported by the evidence.
How did the AG frame that second-degree murder charge?
The way that the AG charged that second-degree count is smart. It's clever. It's tactically smart. There's two ways you can prove a second-degree murder charge under Minnesota law. The harder way is to prove an intentional killing. That's not the way he charged it. The easier way is to prove there was an intentional assault that resulted in a killing, and he charged it that way. So I think he's doing what every prosecutor should do. You look for the highest, most serious, applicable charge that you feel confident you can prove.
There are two medical examiners' reports, and there are differences in them, though both conclude it was homicide. Tell us about the differences and how the defense might use that.
Yeah, this is boy, as a prosecutor, you just sort of roll your eyes and go, oh, no, not this. Because you never want competing medical examiners' reports, because then it becomes an issue in the case. So as I understand it, one of the reports concluded that the cause of death was essentially a heart attack or some combination of a pre-existing medical condition along with the physical actions taken by the police, that it was sort of a combination. That was the original report. And then the later report that the family had done says it was asphyxiation, suffocation, cut off of oxygen or blood to the brain. So there will be a fight over which one of those is real. But the bottom line, though, is either way, the prosecution should be fine.
And that's former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig speaking to Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news by listening to the Bloomberg Law Show at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures on the rise, up 25 points. Dow futures up 320. NASDAQ futures up 38. The DAX in Germany's up 1.8%. 10-year Treasury down 8/32, yield 0.85%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is up 2% or 73 cents at $38.14 a barrel. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television.
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
This is a message from the RNLI and Her Majesty's Coast Guard. Beach lifeguards can't be everywhere this summer, so they can't always protect your family, but you can. So keep an eye on your loved ones. Avoid taking risks in the sea. Don't use inflatables. In an emergency, dial 999 for the Coast Guard. Get more advice at rnli.org/beach2020. Thank you.
The Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Kevin Clark.
If Josh Allen became the 10th best quarterback in football this year, they'd probably win 14 games. Am I wrong about that?
No. If you as a quarterback can't win in the Bills' situation right now, they should not extend you. So many teams, Jets, do not have the information they need to evaluate their quarterbacks based on the teams they've built around. The Bills do.
Listen and subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Search the Mina Kimes Show to listen.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Friday, June 5th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
A 10th day of protest brings peaceful rallies to most cities, though clashes continue in New York.
Wall Street awaits a U.S. jobs report likely to show unemployment nearing 20%.
Global stocks rally on stimulus measures from Europe and word of the next rescue package from Congress.
New York City prepares for phase 1 of reopening while Governor Cuomo urges protesters to get tested for the coronavirus. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Another roadblock for the baseball season. The NBA return is set, and Drew Brees apologizing.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Take the bond challenge by using the free IBKR bond search tool to compare available yields against those of your broker. Learn more at ibkr.com/bonds.
And U.S. futures are gaining ahead of the monthly jobs report. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 23 points. Dow futures up 301. NASDAQ futures up 34. The DAX in Germany is up 1.7%. CAC in Paris up 2.2%. And the FTSE 100 is up 1.1%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.75%. And the Hang Seng in Hong Kong jumped 1.7%. 10-year Treasury down 8/30 seconds. Yield 0.85%. The yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.8% or 69 cents at 38.10 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.9% or $15.30 at 17.12.10 an ounce. And the euro 1.1335 against the dollar. Nathan.
All right, Karen, thank you. We begin this morning in Minneapolis, where hundreds gathered to honor the memory of George Floyd. The memorial was attended by political leaders, musicians, actors, and human rights advocates from across the country and was capped off by a fiery eulogy from the Reverend Al Sharpton.
It is not a normal funeral. It is not a normal circumstance, but it's too common, and we need to deal with it.
Thousands also gathered in Brooklyn, New York to honor Floyd's memory. George Floyd's brother, Terrence, spoke at the gathering in Brooklyn's Cadman Plaza.
I'm proud of the protest, but I'm not proud of the destruction.
Memorials in Minneapolis and New York, two of several gatherings across the country in memory of George Floyd.
A 10th day of protests brought peaceful rallies to most cities, though clashes erupted again in New York. And Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us now with the very latest. Good morning, John.
Karen, thousands across New York City continued protests well past an 8 p.m. curfew. Large gatherings continued into the evening in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. Police arrested dozens after confining and then charging demonstrators who defied the curfew, though there were fewer violent confrontations than in days past. Upstate in Buffalo, New York, video of a confrontation between police and a protester has gone viral. Footage shows an elderly man pushed to the ground by police. He hits the ground and a pool of blood forms near his head. Two officers involved in the incident have been suspended. Millions have watched the footage, including New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who calls the use of force, quote, wholly unjustified and utterly disgraceful. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Day.
Thanks. In California, protests have turned peaceful. That has local officials lifting curfews across the state. Here with more is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
San Francisco, Los Angeles anxiously taking the step and awaiting the results. In doing so, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti said, I'm a little scared about that, but sometimes fear is what you've got to do. The ACLU, which had sued Los Angeles and the city of San Bernardino on behalf of Black Lives Matter for suppressing First Amendment guarantees to political protest and freedom of movement, applauded the end of the order. Sacramento, which was slow to put one in place, left its on. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, and thank you. Turning to financial markets now, today's monthly payrolls report is the main event for investors. Economists predict a loss of 7.5 million jobs in May, with an unemployment rate north of 19%. We get more from Bloomberg economics correspondent Michael McKee.
The focus will be on the unemployment rate, which should rise to a level not seen since the Great Depression. May's actual job losses should be about half the number seen in April, although they will cover more industries. Unemployment will spread from restaurants, bars, airlines, and hotels to retail and other businesses hit by a prolonged loss of demand. The hope is that as bad as the numbers will be, they will mark the bottom of the crisis. The slow drop of initial jobless claims suggests job losses may be more limited in June. That may help unemployment decline at least a little this month. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Hi, Michael. Thanks. Global stocks are rallying in the wake of fiscal and monetary measures out of Europe. Now we're learning more about plans for the next round of stimulus from the White House. Here with details is Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Sources tell us Trump administration officials expect to spend up to $1 trillion in the next stimulus package. The president says he wants an infrastructure package in the bill, though we are told he has not made a final decision. Action on the measure is likely more than a month away. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says there are no plans for a package until after lawmakers return from their next recess on July 20th. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Jeff, thank you. Oil gaining as OPEC and its allies prepare to extend production cuts. There's been a breakthrough in negotiations after Russia and Saudi Arabia struck a deal with members on compliance quotas. We get more from Bloomberg Energy reporter James Thornhill.
Really what the wrangling has been over is trying to get these junior partners in OPEC to carry out their side of the bargain in order to get an agreement on extending the output cuts by a month. It remains to be seen, of course, whether a month will be long enough to maintain the price rally we've seen, but it looks like this deal will get rubber stamped over the weekend.
And NYMEX crude oil at $38.19 a barrel.
On the corporate front, shares of American Airlines are surging in early trading. The carrier says it'll boost July flights 74% compared with this month. That has American shares up 12.5%. Futures higher, S&P futures up 22 points, Dow futures ahead by 283. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. That brings us to 6:07 on Wall Street, and Amy Morris with a look at what else is happening around the world. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. Thank you. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is concerned that the crowded protests with thousands of demonstrators could lead to more COVID-19 cases. He says protesters have an obligation to get tested for the virus.
If you were at a protest, go get a test, please. The protesters have a civic duty here also.
Fewer people in New York are being hospitalized for COVID-19, and some stores in New York City can reopen starting Monday, but some of the biggest stores won't. Coach Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman will not be opening any of their fashion boutiques. Major retailers say they aren't opening for curbside pickup on June 8th, which is when the first phase of recovery is set for New York City. Macy's says it plans to participate, but they'll be taking it day by day. New Jersey's non-essential retail businesses can open starting June 15th. Stores will be limited to 50% capacity, and customers are required to wear face coverings. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy announced the latest step to restart the economy as the virus put more than 1 in 9 New Jersey residents out of work since mid-March. As businesses do prepare to reopen, the governor says social distancing must remain the routine. New York Police Commissioner Dermot Shea says the violence seen at the protests is, quote, not what democracy looks like. He says the incidents are part of a larger anti-police sentiment fueled by online rhetoric and misinformation.
Let's be a little mature and a little responsible. And before you start commenting on a 6-second video, do a little homework and get the facts.
And a judge in New York has ruled the New York Police Department can hold protest detainees for more than 24 hours. Judge James Burke says curfew violators and criminal looters can be kept in custody because of the pandemic, preventing live arraignments, which causes delays. Job losses and pay cuts impacted all of the United States, but the worst of it might have been in New York, where almost half of all residents suffered a drop in income, especially in households with children. 55.7% of all New York City households took a hit. Service, retail, and blue-collar workers who can't do their jobs from home suffered the most cuts. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thank you. It is 6:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashar.
Good morning, Nathan. The NBA voted 29-1 to approve the plan for the season that was shut down March 12th to resume. 22 of the 30 teams will head to Orlando July 7th, begin games there July 31st. They'll each play 8 games over the next 16 days, and the results will be added to what was played earlier, and then the regular season will be over, and 16 of the 22 teams will move on to the playoffs. The players on board. Commissioner Adam Silver said he had them in the loop throughout, although Union Chief Michelle Roberts did say she was not aware of a plan to start the 2021 season as early as December 1st. But for the most part, harmony in the NBA as opposed to Major League Baseball. The owners keep rejecting player proposals and vice versa. The union, after a 2-hour conference call yesterday, quote, roundly rejected MLB's latest pitch. They feel there was already an agreement in place back in March not to cut pay. Drew Brees apologized, not once but twice. First in a lengthy online post, and then again later in the day in an Instagram video.
I wish I would have laid out what was on my heart in regards to the George Floyd murder, Ahmaud Arbery, the years and years of social injustice, police brutality, and the need for so much reform and change in regards to legislation and some of the other things to bring equality to our black communities.
Brees said his comments about kneeling during the national anthem completely missed the mark, that they lacked awareness, compassion, and empathy, and that the pain he caused breaks his heart. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. Join us tonight for the Bloomberg Business of Sports show, and we'll talk with Jim Van Stone. He's the president of business operations and chief commercial officer at Monumental Sports. You can catch that conversation tonight at 7 and tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio, or subscribe to the Bloomberg Business of Sports show wherever you get your podcasts. S&P futures are higher by 20 points. Dow futures up 272. NASDAQ futures up 26 points at the moment. And you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
NJIT, New Jersey. If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone.